I'll call to order the York County Council Workshop, August 13th, 2024. Our order of business is to follow up discussion regarding York County's strategic plan. So I will turn it over to you, Josh.
Great. Excited to be here tonight with y'all. We've been working hard the past 4 months on getting to this point. So tonight we have a draft strategic plan. So we shared that draft plan with y'all last week via email, and I know y'all have been digging in and bringing, combining your feedback and your ideas and your questions for discussion tonight. So we're really looking forward to this discussion. All right, so let's remind everybody, we do have a viewing audience. So why do we do strategic plan? When y'all hired me, the goal was to develop a shared vision of council that we could communicate to staff and communicate to residents, that we can then work on over the next 3 years. So we're all on the same page about what we're trying to do. We can share with our community how we're going to do it and the expected results, and then we can present data and updates to everybody to share with them where we're at. So first thing though, you got to actually have a strategic plan. So this is an organizational strategic plan. It's not a visionary plan. This is a tactical, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to try to accomplish in the next 3 years. And it's an open opportunity for discussion with y'all, staff, and residents, okay? So why do we do that? We want that roadmap. We want to show people where we're going. We want to have something that we can measure, something that we can report on with data to show how we're doing. We want to show our residents through communication tools what they can expect, and then we want to deliver. But we want to make sure we're meeting y'all's expectations. And so the other thing is we want to make sure we're funding what is most important. So what are y'all's priorities? Let's make sure those are in the strategic plan, and then let's make sure that's what we're funding in the annual budget. That's another reason we do strategic plan. So where have we been? Where are we going? First workshop I had with y'all, we talked about this plan of how we could potentially get a strategic plan done before September. So y'all throughout September, I told you that's pretty quick, but we'll do our best. We've done our best, thanks to Trish and all of our directors and assistant directors. We've gotten you to this point. Now we need y'all's help to finalize the strategic plan. So where have we been? April 9th, we were up here talking about this plan, how we could achieve it, how we could get you to track, how we might be able to get this done before we meet with the state delegation in September, okay? So what did we do first? We went and met with all directors and assistant directors. We did a SWOT with them. We wanted to know from the experts in our organization what they thought we needed to work on. We then did that same thing with y'all June 21st. Y'all brought it. Y'all had a full day and you did a lot of work. You did your SWOT. You also themed and you developed goal areas. Okay, and we have that in front of you. This is what it looks like, y'all. But this is one of the pieces of paper in front of you. It shows the areas, the SWOT, and kind of how we group them. So you have those documents. That's from your work on June 21st. So what did we do after that? In July, we got all the directors and assistant directors back together. We presented what y'all shared, and we said, hey, help us take what we heard from council and begin to put it into a rough draft of a strategic plan. And they've been working hard on that, and Trish and I have been facilitating those conversations, and we've been meeting with them. In August, we worked to finalize those. So what we've done is y'all gave us 6 goal areas. We worked and split up our directors into 6 goal teams, cross-departmental teams, to help finalize what you see in front of you, the draft strategic plan, in its detail. We met with them, finalized it, got done August 7th. We turned that around to y'all last week. So we find ourselves here tonight. We really need feedback from y'all about what you think. So this is now a rough draft. So we want to develop the final draft. We want to make sure this meets your expectations. So tonight we want to hear from y'all about what you think, how we did, what we can improve, what questions you have. Our goal still is to have this done potentially in September for y'all to adopt at a council meeting. I know we're hoping to meet with the delegation in September as well. If y'all have a lot of feedback and we want to make a lot of changes, we might need to meet in a month in another workshop and then bring a final draft to you in October. But that all depends on what y'all have to share tonight. All right, so just to remind y'all, in this draft in front of you, so if you pick this up, you'll see the goal at the top of the page, First one being grow economic opportunities. Then you'll see what we call strategies underneath that. So your typical goal has 3 or 4 strategies, all right? So those strategies, let's remember what they are. Those are the things that we have to do well, or the barriers we have to address to accomplish the goal. So in any goal, you've got a broad goal statement, and then we've worked with staff to try to define that for you. You don't want a really long goal name, because then nobody can remember it and nobody knows what it means. So we've got shortened goal names, we've got a definition that we work hard on, and then underneath that we have the strategies that if we do these things, we think we can accomplish the goal. Underneath that are initiatives. So those are action items. Those are things that staff are going to go do. They have a clear beginning and an end. And if we do those things, we think we'll accomplish the strategy. So much of what strategic planning is a hierarchy of tasks for staff to accomplish and then report on. So those are the 3 big things that we want to make sure you understand what you're looking at on the piece of paper. All right, so what do we want tonight? We want y'all's feedback. We want to hear from you about what you think. We've taken your words and your guidance at that retreat, your SWOT that y'all did, which you did a great job on when y'all were in 2 groups. It was very, very interesting how similar were the 2 groups ended. And then, remember that afternoon where y'all grouped your SWOT and prioritized it on that big piece of butcher paper? We took those and we've worked to make sure every one of these goals captures what you shared. We could have still gotten some stuff wrong, so that's what we need tonight for you to say is, if you don't agree with something, if you think it needs to be updated. I want to give you all some feedback though. A lot of y'all have asked me this question prior to this meeting. So what kind of feedback do we need tonight? Do we need solutions, or do we need do we want to make sure the wording's right? So the way I think about this, there's a difference between the what and the how. Tonight is about the what. We want to make sure the what is right. So we need from y'all's perspective, if we got the what right, or if we need to change it. The how, that's going to come later. We're going to work with staff to develop the how after y'all approve the what. Staff is going to help us figure out how to accomplish these initiatives, and then we're going to come to y'all to tell you what our plan is through committee meetings, through workshops over this year, so that y'all get a sense on the how. If y'all don't like the how, obviously we'll listen to y'all too, but tonight, in order to make the most of our 2 hours, let's focus on the what. All right, so the other thing that's important for y'all to think about is there's no bad ideas tonight. We want everybody to share. We want this to be a collaborative discussion. We're here to answer your questions. The hard part is we have to make sure we reach consensus. So that day we had the retreat, y'all had 2 groups, you shared your SWOT, and you prioritized. Remember, y'all put the stickers on the wall, right? And we captured the prioritization. And so the stickers were really your way to build consensus, because obviously not everything can be a priority. But if we're taking things off or we're adding things, we've got to make sure there's consensus. And I know Tom couldn't be here tonight, so he shared his thoughts so that we can incorporate those ideas. We do want to make sure there's a consensus of the council if we're going to make dramatic changes to this. And so when I say, what does everybody think of that idea? That's what I'm really looking for tonight is for y'all to help together share this. Share where you're at.
Josh, just so I'm clear, the comments from, everybody's here except for Tom, and he did say he had a conflict, but the one that, his input is the one that has the red and green on it.
That's right.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, so we printed it for y'all. Used to have, I'm going to do my best, and Trish as well, to kind of throw out his thoughts when there's time. But again, we're also facilitating the meeting, so in case we miss anything, we want y'all to have his thoughts right in front of you. We're going to incorporate his feedback as long as y'all are in agreement with it, just like we incorporate anybody's. But it's important that y'all know that so we can get a sense if that's the consensus or not tonight. Yep, thanks for bringing that up. So that's what we're trying to do tonight. And with that, what Trish and I are going to do is we're going to go through each goal on its own and walk you through kind of the why of the goal, how we got here, with your feedback, and then open it up for discussion. With that, I'm going to hand off to Trish for the first goal.
All right, thank you. Okay, so our first goal, as you can see, is about economic development. We heard from you all that economic development was a priority during the SWOT analysis. So the short goal is grow economic opportunities, and then the long goals, develop economic opportunities that improve residents' quality of life and support the community's vision for economic development by providing a favorable business climate that values local businesses, promotes economic vibrancy, and prioritizes partnerships to create a more diverse and balanced economy. And so what you'll see up here are the listed strategies that are in bold on this piece on the draft, and then the council's feedback, which is this piece of paper. So I'm going to correlate between these two pieces of paper. So we heard at the council retreat that y'all's desire for a vision and focus. So we saw in here you want to be the first choice. You want citizens to live and work here. You want to become more community focused in economic development, have a focus on what type of businesses that we can bring in. So a strategy that staff came up with for council's feedback on vision and focus was to promote economic vibrancy to create a robust economic landscape. And you'll see under that first strategy, the initiatives, which are the letters. And so we're not going to run through all of the initiatives for time's sake, but just a couple of those were partner with the planning and development on land development efforts to create more vibrant and connected mixed-use developments that meet the needs and desires of residents, workforce, and employers. Staff also came up with develop a plan for the use of the economic development funds to achieve the community's vision and also to achieve the county's long-term vision for economic development. And then you'll see the other initiatives that staff came up with for that strategy. And secondly, we heard from council at the retreat that you all wanted economic development to become more community focused. So a strategy that staff came up with was invest in quality of life opportunities to enhance experiences for residents. And so this was about bolstering the quality of life for our residents. And some of the initiatives for that were conduct a market assessment to create a resource guide and communications campaign focused on the county's ag tourism offerings. You'll see under this strategy, staff really focused on the ag tourism and the natural assets, connecting people to those. You'll see that throughout numerous strategies throughout the night and other plans as well. And then staff came up with an initiative of create a plan that connects the community to the natural assets, which I just talked about, if that provides for commercial activity amongst those natural assets. Next, the economic feedback that we heard from council was small business initiatives. And you'll see that the strategy number 3 is about supporting and promoting initiatives that strengthen small businesses. And I do want to comment that Tom also sent in an extra comment throughout the day where he wanted to make sure that he listed out Winthrop and some other stakeholders we could partner with, and he wanted to make sure the COG was in that as well. So I just wanted to make that note. So you'll see under that strategy that staff came up with to create an innovative digital toolkit, which could be a resource for small businesses and increase awareness of small businesses initiatives. Staff came up with the initiative to create a small business council that supports and promotes small business initiatives. So under that strategy, you'll see that all has to relate to small businesses. And then the last strategy for economic development, council talked about the private and public partnerships and being strategic in those partnerships. And so staff came up with the strategy to engage stakeholders to prioritize and support our community's vision for economic development. Once more, turning the focus to be community vision. So in that initiative was create a stakeholder engagement plan that will align economic development partnerships. Also create an engagement and communication campaign that educates our community about the benefits of economic development with a focus on entrepreneurs and family-owned business. Within the retreat, it was mentioned about the family businesses are here and keeping those here. And then also having an economic setting where entrepreneurs can thrive. So I think what you'll see under here is that staff really worked hard to create a balanced economy and an ecosystem that encompasses a talented workforce economic outcomes for all, innovative solutions, resiliency, we're gonna be competitive and prosperous. And that's what we meant when staff said we wanted economic vibrancy, because we're wanting to create a robust economic landscape, just strengthening our economic opportunities and grow those economic opportunities. And that is how they all connect to the goals and the short goal. So at this time, the format for the night, we're just gonna run through the strategy initiatives, and then after each strategy, we're gonna open up the floor to council to hear your comments, feedback, any guidance or opportunities that we can take back.
Yes, so in this first goal, now is when we want to hear from y'all, kind of what feedback you have, what questions, what changes, what things we might have missed. So we're going to open it up to the floor.
I think the way I'd like to approach it is, just so that everybody has equal opportunity to have their comments said, is that we'll just run through, we'll start with you, Tommy, or, you know, let's run through council, let us have some feedback to you. Obviously, the only council person that is not here today is Tom, and he sent his information via written information. But I think probably the easiest way for us to do this is to let each council member have an opportunity to speak, so that everybody has an opportunity, and then we can
We'll try to
see if
review
there's an
that.
issue. Yeah.
Yep.
My turn. Well, on one, about my biggest concern was on C, hiring a consultant and identify top industrial sites to identify water, sewer, and road infrastructure. And what I don't understand is why so many times we hire consultants for different things that we're already paying inside the county. And those certain ones in those divisions, they should be able to tell us that automatically. And, I mean, there's been other cases too where they've wanted to hire consultants, and I know if I go out on a job to fix a man's piece of equipment, he expects me to be able to fix it.
Sure.
You know, I ain't hiring a consultant to come and tell me what to do.
Yeah,
So
so,
that was a,
okay.
but you get what I'm saying. I mean, we got a water and a sewer and road that should be able to be took care of in-house.
Okay. What else? Because we can respond to these two as we go.
Yeah.
But was there anything else?
That was my biggest question there. Everything else, other than some little bit of tweaking,
Right.
except I see, I tried to make some notes. The engaging stakeholders to prioritize and support our communities and a vision for economic development. My question, one, I think we need to be looking into true manufacturing, but when we're talking about a vision of both sides of people, and we don't even have news no more or anything else, how you planning on accomplishing that? I mean, people, you got meetings now, I don't know if sometimes y'all look at the results from after one of our meetings. It may be 8 people, it may be 34 people.
Mm-hmm.
So how you gonna do it?
You want to list, you want to just, so everybody can follow along, what was the specific
Right.
strategy and initiative you were
That was-
speaking
The last comment I made was on number 4 there.
to? Okay, so he was just talking about the
If
strategy.
y'all,
So,
Josh, and if we could do this, let's let council walk through kind of their
Before we
comments,
respond.
and then let's do a comprehensive response, because there may be some folks. And I would ask council, if you echo a response, maybe just say, hey, that's a response, and then, you know, y'all can keep track of the
Okay.
comments. That way we aren't having, everybody gets a chance to speak, but we're not overstepping.
that works.
Okay?
Perfect. Is that it on this one? Okay.
Okay, so, on number 2, I do like focusing ag tourism. I think that is very important for the county. And then D, under 2, is critical for me to improve transparency and trust where economic development is concerned. And then 3, as a retired small business owner, this is, I have to agree with Tom, this is my #1 priority, and I like the fact that one of the initiatives would be to create a small business council that supports and promotes small business initiatives. Had I had these things when I had my business, I might have been even more successful than I already was. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think that the topics and the headings are fine, that we're going to look into and see how can we achieve them. I guess the big thing is with this council is going to be when staff says, let's do this, or other council members says, let's do this to achieve it, how are we going to come to that consensus with getting there? I know for years part of the conversation has been local vendors trying to do as much county contracts or whatever with our locals. When we're talking about helping small businesses, we need a small business, like Winthrop has a small business development center that walks people through a business plan, financial perspectives. If we're not going to do that, I'm sure I get asked a question all the time, do y'all have any funds to help start up? Like, no, we don't. So that's going to be the #1 thing that people are going to be coming to the county looking. If you can't give me any money, some people don't value your advice, they value your money even more. So how do we get over that hump to say, hey, we have something that just is equal to the finances that you're looking for? But in this day and time, how do we get to that part without offering or setting aside money? And I think we set ourselves up for a big failure if we just slap a pot of money on the table and think we can just pass it out, because the line for that gets longer every year. And how do we, you want to take the public's input on things that we're doing, and I see how do we incorporate the community's vision? Well, let's face it, a lot of times community want what's best for them particularly, not particularly for the entire community. So how do we work that in there? Because some going to want this particular company, some not going to want this particular company. And we know how trying to disseminate and get information out to those benefits. Because very rarely do this council, we very rarely see a disadvantage for a business being. We look at jobs, we look at tax base. Community's not going to look at that. They're going to look at what is this company, and their whole idea of a good company is going to be totally different from what we use to evaluate or what economic development used to evaluate. So I think we'll have our work cut out just trying to go after the community's vision, because they're not going to have all the information that we're going to have. They're not going to believe all the information that we even try to put out. So I think that's a real uphill battle when we say basically the community's vision. Because let's face it, a lot of information flows through the staff, this council, that we know a whole lot more. Not to say that we're special, but we have to know a lot more when we're doing and bringing in companies for this community. So I think, but just for me, looking at just the headings of what we're going to try to do, it's just how do we achieve certain things under these headings that this whole council is going to agree with. How do we get there? Because I've always wanted to do something with small businesses, but because we always give incentives to the multi-million-dollar business, but we have local taxpayers saying, hey, you're giving tax breaks or incentives to big companies, what about the, so that's always been a question, but we haven't gotten it, we haven't made a real push, and it's going to come down to what does the 7 council members agree to do to help the small guy. So I have no problem with the headings, it's just, how do we formulate that plan to get there to achieve the goal.
Okay. So I think economic development is critical, and I think that it's coming whether we are fishing for it or not. It's kind of like when you're in a county like ours, and the fish they're gonna jump in the boat. You don't have to go out there and throw a line a lot of times. So I think really the most important thing is for us to determine, I agree with Bump, I think all the headings are great, and I think a lot of time and effort went into picking these headings, and they're all big things. And you can't do every big thing. That's where I think this list probably gets narrowed down over time, and in the short term. And, you know, long term, you know, I was thinking, actually, you know, just over the last couple of weeks, that, you know, what's the short term versus the long term? And the short term is, you know, we've got a strategic plan. And every year that we've done a strategic plan, we've thrown out different things, and we've kind of focused on them and kind of not. There hasn't been this dedicated effort in my time on council. But I think that our plan, if we're looking at this and this is a year-long plan, this is a multi-year-long plan.
It's a 3-year plan.
Yeah, it's a
Yep,
3-year
three-year
plan. And I think that's short, because everything that we're doing here has to be continued beyond that, right? We're not gonna accomplish all of this in 3 years. We're gonna still be working on this in 3 years.
So
Right.
I want to save my comments to the end, but I think in theory, this goal will always be important for the county. And some of these strategies we might keep doing, but at the end of 3 years, we will have worked on each of the initiatives. So all the letters, unless at the end of a year, y'all tell us, hey, don't worry about that. That's not important anymore. So some of these initiatives, when we do a year in review, and we'll talk about the process over the next year, council might say, hey, we thought that was a good idea. What we know now, that's not what we want to do, because this is a 3-year plan. We want to give y'all some flexibility. So there will be opportunities, but staff is not going to go complete all of these in 1 year. We're going to have to prioritize based on what we know y'all's priorities are for year 1 versus year 2 versus year 3. Yeah.
I think what my point is that this is a plate full. This is a real plate full, and some of this is gonna drop off. It's not gonna get the focus that it needs. So I've got some specific concerns here, and you know, I agree with Tommy too. We tend to hire a lot of consultants, and we spend a lot on doing that. And I think we need to know ahead of time really what are we going to commit to. I mean, when that consultant comes back and says this, what are we going to do? And if they come back and say this, what are we going to do? There's a fork in the road when we hire a consultant, and I think we have to pay attention. We have to be ready to commit to something on that, because over a period of time, over 2 or 3 years, you know what? If this plan is in place for 3 years and we don't get around to doing what we thought we were going to do, now we got a new study is needed because time has passed and so much has changed. I have a concern about the aspect of this that is the what sounds good. And listen, and personally, I love it. But the reality is that when we're talking about the natural assets, the ag tourism and those things, we've already bitten off a lot. And we haven't gotten to those things. So it's very concerning to me to see things on this list that look like we're going to continue those goals when we haven't met and we haven't done the things that we bit off a few years ago. We don't have, I mean, we've got 1,900 acres that, you know, we continue to put money in and we're getting there, but I would rather see in this part 2 that we finalize what we've started, not take another bite of not take on more. You know, we've got Bethel Lake Wiley area, we're waiting. We've been waiting for 4 years for things. And Catawba Bend, I mean, we're going to complete maybe a phase, but the reality is that...
We're talking about parks, though. We've got a goal for parks, too, later.
But agritourism, when you talk about agritourism, that's parks. I think that's parks. Is that parks?
It can be, but in terms of what we heard from y'all wanted to focus on tourism in this goal. You also wanted us to focus on agriculture and farmers. And so we're really focused on connecting with what makes York County special here, and that's our natural assets, our rural farming history, and wanting to make sure we're taking care of those things. So one way to do that y'all have thrown out is to help encourage agricultural tourism. And I know that's something y'all have looked at over the years. There's an ag facility, I'm meeting with Clover and York superintendents this week to talk about that facility, because y'all asked me to get involved and help. And so that's all a part of this. So I do think some places have made agriculture parks. Northern Virginia has one that's famous.
Yeah.
But that's more of a parks discussion. This is more of helping our farmers be successful and making sure that they can handle.
So
farm
those,
jobs for
that's
future
mutual
generations.
exclusive of the Parks and Rec?
We're gonna talk about it later tonight. Yep.
Okay, well, that might, I might feel a little
Okay.
more at ease about that. So, you know, I still have concerns about the small business, and I'm not here to be the negative Nelly tonight, but, I mean, I don't think we're here to say, oh, this is all great. I think we're here to critique it. I think that's where the benefit comes for our next step.
Yep.
But I think that the small business is a very, I mean, listen, I heard from a small business today that's struggling, and it's not one that I've talked about. There's another one that I think we could probably help. A great example of helping small businesses. But I heard from a business today that is struggling, and I didn't really quite know what to say to them, because I thought, how would we help them? What would we possibly do to help them? And I don't know the answer to that. So, you know, if we're gonna create a small business council and we're gonna, you know, figure out what to do, I don't know who figures that out. I don't know that we are armed with small business professionals on this council to figure that out. So I don't know if we're going to model this after other counties and what they've done, or I don't know where the model for this comes from. And I think we're overlapping with other initiatives on that.
People just give a boatload of money to a couple groups to try to foster some small business activity.
So I
And we
think,
can talk about that
what we
later.
need to do is like, let's let everybody have their piece.
Yep.
And then let's circle back and see where do you need more instruction when it comes
Yep.
to our focus. And, you know, one of the things that's the hardest, Allison, did you finish
Yeah,
everything?
I'm done.
I just want to make sure everybody gets their piece, and then you tell us where we need to have like a little bit more crystallization for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things as chair, what I love about Kerwood, what I love about where I was, is like, I like being on the outskirts, because then I can just say what I want to say and move on. But I'm gonna let Mr. Huckabee speak, and then I'll speak last. Because I got a lot going on, and I want to be consistent. So you go ahead, and then I'll speak last.
All right, so I'm starting from the top and I'll go down, but from the beginning, I have to ask the question, what is the path to success for staff's role in implementing our strategic plan?
Mm-hmm.
So what are our potential roadblocks that exist currently that we may need to address to give us the greatest chance of success with this strategic plan? So that's my first question. All right, move into strategies number 1, 4. Y'all don't have it, I broke it out, but small business. What is the definition of a small business? I know we're not looking for answers tonight, I'm just, okay. B. What are the needs of the employer and the employees of the business park? C. Am I going too fast? C. What are the benefits of hiring a consultant in economic development they already have in mind what could be our first industrial site? D. I'm going to add something to that, but I'll just keep going. D. What do you want to change in the 2016 and 18 revisions to the ordinance that defines the purpose and use of the ED funds?
You're on 1D.
You okay there? Number 2, A. What is ag tourism? And not to correct you, but I'm real sensitive to this particular topic. I'm not going to get into that, but you mentioned that you were asked to talk to York and Clover, but I don't think we've given that directive. I know I haven't. I don't.
Part of the budget
I'm very
process y'all
cautious
did.
in that.
Yeah, one of the votes on the budget
I know you
process.
brought it up, but we never, I don't know if there was consensus on that or not. I'm just speaking a mind here, because I have a different perspective on this that I haven't pushed.
On what?
Getting with the two school districts, that was during the budget discussion.
Say what now?
It came up during the budget discussion, but I don't know if there's
What was the
consensus
topic?
from this group
So
for Josh to go talk to York and Clover about.
remember, when y'all voted in the budget, Tommy was gonna add into the budget, I think it was $100,000 to contribute to this ag facility.
Okay, so that didn't make it in the budget. That's what he's talking about. Okay. I just
Right.
want to make sure I
Well,
understood.
But
No, but that's not what.
what Watts is bringing up is, I earlier said, I'm engaging with the school districts, because at that point, y'all said, you know, can you just talk to the school districts to see how we might be able to help them instead? So obviously, as manager, I'm not gonna make a commitment without coming back to y'all to have you vote on what our recommendation is. So I think everybody's good. What I'm doing is, I'm going to ask the school districts how we could help, how we could be good partners. Like I said I would during the budget process.
Then I'm gonna add one more thing to this.
But then anything that I hear from them, the manager's office, what we're gonna do is we're gonna package an agenda item. We're gonna make a recommendation for y'all to see if y'all want us to do that before we go do it and spend the money. Because there's no money in the budget to help them. We'd have to bring that forward to y'all. Y'all would have to use economic development funds, something else. But you're gonna have to vote on that. So I'm not doing anything without y'all's permission.
So let's go back to 2A then. My question was, what is ag tourism? So my follow-up question is, what is a study on ag tourism? All right, keep rolling down.
Can I iterate something?
We gotta go through, everybody's gotta share.
Let's get through.
Yeah.
All right, 3C, again, what is a small business? And does an inventory of businesses exist through a market and inventory study of our businesses here in York County? That's a mouthful, but do we have an inventory of the businesses of York County? And if so, what are they?
Business license.
We don't have it. I can answer that.
Kevin Madden.
Part two of that question still. What's our strategy and how will we measure outcomes and success? So if we're gonna invest in small business, what's our strategy and how are we gonna measure outcomes and success?
Sure.
Third part of that question is, who needs help? All right, number 4. I'll just leave it at that. That's enough. Y'all heard enough for me. I think number 4 speaks for itself. I can
Okay.
add some things, but,
Okay.
You want to add something? Go ahead.
nah, go ahead.
So I haven't had a chance to take a look at
Thank you.
Tom's comments, but let me start with this. If there's one area that I think I've probably been most disappointed with where we are, it's probably this area, economic development. I think it's probably because there has been a complete lack of communication between council and our economic development department about how do we attract the business that we want. There have been many council members that have come before us and said, you know what, we have the catbird seat. We have an opportunity to attract. Michael Johnson's comment has always been, we're the pretty girl at the dance. How do we go out and attract what it is that we want? And I think that part of the problem is there's been a lack of communication. And if there were one thing that I would say is the biggest issue here, it's communication between council and our economic development department. I think that has got to be fixed. And I think the main points are being proactive versus being reactive, because the state, the way this process works, if folks don't know this, is that the state goes out and they promote these initiatives. And they have state commerce that promotes these initiatives. And there are state statutes that decide what are the initiatives and what are the things that we're gonna give to businesses. And that goes out before we are even communicated about. And so I do think that having some better communication between the community and our economic development about what is it that we want to attract. As I walk through these things, so I think if there are 2 key things that I see from this, and I've spent some time on this, it's communication and it's shared vision. I think that we need to be attracting businesses that mesh with the communities that they're situated around. I mean, I agree with Tommy I don't know why under number one, we would need to hire a consultant to identify our industrial sites. We know where they are. We don't need to do that. We've done this several times. The problem is we've not been able to identify what do we want to go after and how do we identify the businesses that make our communities feel comfortable about what we're doing and that we get ahead of that. Because if we don't get ahead of it, it's done before we get there because the process is set for itself. So that's the question that I have. I do think that, you know, when it comes to small business initiatives, one of the things that I think we struggle with is that I think all of us sitting here recognize the importance of small business. Small business actually keeps our community more afloat than the big business. How do we support them? To me, what we've done is we haven't defined small business, but I think it's very easily defined. I think that is any business that doesn't qualify for state incentives. Because if you don't qualify for state incentives, if you qualify for state incentives, then you've got your map there. If you don't, then you're kind of on an island on your own. And what bothers me is that when council has somebody come to us and reactively say, hey, we want you to do this. But you know what we haven't done is we haven't set a parameter. What I would love for us to see is like, if we're gonna dedicate funding to a small business initiative, let's dedicate that funding, let's set the parameters, and let's let everybody apply. And anybody who can come forward with the best approach that's gonna increase investment, increase jobs, you want to have, I know that other municipalities have done this, you invest this, we'll reimburse you for your upfit if you can prove that you can do this. And I think that's where we miss the mark, is that it looks like you're picking and choosing winners when you approach small business that way. I think the better approach is for you guys to figure out how do we come up with a small business initiative that says, here's the funding we're gonna dedicate for this, here's the criteria you have to meet, and if you can meet this, whoever is the best one survives. But I think I think people lose trust in government, they lose trust in us if we just like pick the one that comes here.
Sure.
That's where I think we have problems. So when it comes to small business stuff, what?
Can I add something to one of my points that ties in exactly what you're saying right now since you're talking about it? When I say what is small business, when we know that the state's incentives begin at 2.5 million and 75 jobs, so that is their base. 2.5 million and 75 jobs, and York County's is 10 million for certain industries. So I'd like to add that to it because that establishes a bit of a ceiling if you're talking about small business from one person up to those numbers. If that's
So to me, when I look back at what y'all put, I don't know that I can argue with anything other than 1C. I agree with Tom. I don't think we need to hire a consultant. We've done it too many times. We know where our industrial sites are. We need to figure out how to promote those and how to engage the community to say we're cooperative with that.
Okay.
I think the two biggest initiatives are number 3A, evaluate and promote our local businesses. I think we need to have I think we need to teach our people here locally, how do you apply for a job here with our county, and how do we help you? I am fully supportive of that. I think we should be fully supportive of that. If it doesn't cost the taxpayers a thing, it would be educating our businesses here locally. How do you get involved in that? And I definitely think that 4C, collaborate with our communities and targeting businesses that we want. That's what I'm seeing is the biggest problem we have. Let's target the businesses that our community wants to see, and that's where I see that there's a real problem with communication between economic development and the community, because there's only so many places in the county that allow development for business, right? I mean, you can't, unless you're going to create new places, there's only certain places. How do we maximize those benefits? And how do we make sure that it meshes with our community to where it works with that? That's where I think that we can have a huge bang for our buck. And I do think that when it comes to agritourism, to me, it's very simple. We have a lot of farms in our community, and we can create a whole lot of hurdles for them. I mean, I've had a recent person in my district who simply, like, they gather the straw that does the they want to put it in these containers, right? And so we're drawing a line that says, if those containers have wheels on them, that's a problem. It becomes a trucking industry. But if we support our agriculture businesses, which really should be focused here because that's what our community is based on, how do we help them not have this crazy bureaucratic stuff pummeled on them? How do we lift that and promote the so when it comes to agritourism, to me, it's very fundamentally take the bureaucracy off of the farms. Somebody that needs to store their straw because they're doing the erosion control for areas, just because they have a Conex, what I've been told is that there's a distinction now at our planning staff that, and if it's on wheels, it's a trucking industry. If it's not on wheels, they can use it. That's ridiculous. That's a problem. This is how we help our farming industry be able not to have this bureaucracy over them, to be able to instead of Lowe's selling them this stuff, this business here should be able to sell them this stuff, but we're creating that obstacle. So I really think we need to focus on that when it comes to agritourism. Finding ways to say, look, this is how our community supports this initiative, and let's take the bureaucracy off so that we don't create a problem for them. That's where I'm at.
Okay.
I think we're coming back this way. I think that same mentality applies to small businesses. And I want to remind y'all of an example of it, and that was Zora. When Zora tried to open in Lake Wiley, and their building, because of the zoning code, their building was, I think, 51 feet smaller than it needed to be in order to be zoned for what they wanted to do. And it took us 8 months to get them open. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. But it's the same kind of hurdle. It's the same obstacle for the examples you've given for ag tourism, this exact same hurdles for a lot of small businesses.
So I think our goal, right, is just to tie this together, because y'all shared a lot of things, and due to the time, I'm not going to go through each one and respond, right, because we're at 6:45. But we've heard your things. It's very clear that y'all all agree about the consultant, right? So we can just go ahead and say there's consensus on that one. But we've got 6 goals.
Well, that's right, but what I got to say is very important.
Okay.
To you and
Okay. All right, we'll close this out. I'm going to try to transition this here.
I want to say it. Gonna say it. There's a difference in why I requested that money for what the school's doing. We're talking not agritourism. I wish we'd get off of that. That's a totally different. I'm talking about my farm friends and all, and their kids, and the kids going to school. It's for their education. It's for just their school. It's the 4-H'ers, the
Right.
kids born
It's
just
not
like
agritourism.
sports
It's-
or anything
it's
else.
investing
Now, the
quality of life
agritourism
opportunities.
is when people come to my farm, or to go to
Yeah.
Windy Hill, or to go over here. It's two totally different
No.
issues.
And I know that, I think we all know that. I think agritourism is very different.
It's my local kid. All
It's
my
fun-
kids grew up
Tommy, we
for
get
it.
We get it. It's fundamentally, how do we
It's
support-
an education
how do we
for our
support
local kids.
agriculture business and be less,
Personally, I will not do agritourism. We used to do it.
Sure.
And you get some lawsuits on the farm and all, and you can't handle, and you got people all in your junk and everything, you won't do it.
I think the better term is agribusiness, not
Yeah.
agritourism.
That's good feedback.
I just want to make this quick comment, it doesn't need a response to it. The difficulty we've endured simply trying to get the wedding venues and event venues done.
Yeah.
If we couldn't handle that part, we're uphill down with what you want to do. Because it was about bathrooms, parking, it's like.
It's interpretation.
Yeah,
It's what we
we
want to communicate
Sure.
to management about how we want you guys to support our agriculture background
That's right.
and support, if it truly is an agriculture business that's adding on to it, hey, you can come have your wedding out here, do that. But we have gotten too rigid. We've gotten too rigid.
Oh, yeah, and
That's what
porter
we
johns
need to
are
do.
fine.
All right, y'all, I want to transition, but all this is really good stuff. I think that if you think about the essence, and I heard multiple of y'all communicate this, economic development isn't necessarily always along I-77, right? It's all across the county, and it looks different in different places. And the reason why we need to do a better job communicating with y'all, but also with our residents, is we need to go listen to farmers. We need to ask them what they need, what kind of help they need. We need to listen to our small businesses, and we need to deliver for them. This is about listening, communicating, and delivering in different ways in terms of economic development. And so that is the opportunity for change. It's going to be hard, as y'all mentioned. It's not going to be easy. I know there's a difference between the ag tourism and the ag facility, but that ag facility is important for the kids so that they have the opportunity to learn and continue tradition. And for those whose parents aren't farmers, they have the opportunity to learn and continue the tradition. So all this is interrelated. This is great feedback. We've captured it. It's on video. We'll watch the video. I don't need to respond to everything because I want to get through a few more goals tonight. Maybe not all 6, but the next one is a little bit quicker, I hope. Famous last word. Okay. So keep up the good work, y'all. Y'all done your homework. You've come ready to share. That's what we want. This is all good feedback. The next one. When we met with y'all, and in the past, as y'all have thrown out your strategic plans, your strategic commitments, we've talked a lot about communication as being a goal in itself. But when we met with y'all kind of expounded on that in your SWOT. You defined further what that means, what your hopes for our organization are, right? You talked about the need to build trust and transparency. So when we talked about communication, why we need better communication, remember I talked about, well, why do we need that? You got to answer the why. You got 5 whys, and I'll ask you why 5 times, and we're going to get to the underlying problem. So we need to think about how we build trust, how we're more transparent and share. Y'all added a position in the budget, the Strategic Communications Director. We're working on the job description right now. Why did you do that? What's the problem we're trying to solve? Y'all communicated that. We need to do a better job with communications and marketing. We need to be more proactive. Y'all told us to do that. We're doing it. Customer service. We want to be an organization known for great customer service. We do a good job. We do a great job. We can do better. How do we do that? Right? We've unpacked that in this goal. And then in terms of how do we leverage technology, how do we improve processes that our residents are frustrated with, that they have to go through, we want to dedicate and focus on those most frustrating processes. We want to improve it. We want to improve our residents' experience when they come in our buildings or when they're online trying to do business with us, when they come pay their taxes, right? We want to be good stewards. We want to be good employees of the county, making sure the organization is a high-performing organization. That's what this goal is all about. So, with that feedback, this is where we landed. You'll have this in front of you, the high-performing organization goal, which is on page 2. So, where did we land in terms of strategies? To accomplish, transparency and building trust. One thing that we haven't done as an organization, as I've dived in, we don't have a lot of data. We're not talking about what we're doing, how well it's going with actual data. We're going to do that. We're committed to that. We've got different ideas on how to do that here. We want to do that in terms of the programs and the services we're providing. How fast do we respond to water leaks, right? How quickly are we fixing things? We should know that. We should share that. So that's 1B. But also 1E, we want our employees to have a better performance management experience so they know the expectations and how well they're doing in terms of their performance. And we're tying that to data. Okay? We can do that. We want to think about how we can engage with residents so we can better hear from our customers, our citizens. We want to know what they think. We know we need to create a community survey. One of the things that the Parks Master Plan did a survey. We're going to get those results in the coming months. But every other year, most counties our size are doing a community survey. It's a broad survey. It's a baseline. It's our residents telling us how well we're doing. So giving us feedback. It's broad, but it's things that are actionable we can ask about. So what can we do to engage in different ways? Y'all added that position. That's an initiative in here. We're going to reimagine our communications group and maybe create a department if that's what it takes to do it right. We want to have exceptional service. We've got a number of initiatives. And when you see those initiatives, the theme that we put in there is all about training. How do we train our own employees so they have the skills necessary to be successful and to be good at their jobs? How do we empower our employees So every single employee, no matter what level they're in, are empowered to be problem solvers and deal with issues on the spot. We gotta be better at solving problems. That's a theme I've heard from y'all. That's what I've seen as I've gone around our departments. We can do better, and we're gonna help support our employees in that growth. In terms of efficiency, we've got a number of initiatives here, but the key here is we want to look at processes that potentially aren't working, and we want to fix them. And that's what you'll see in those initiatives. So with that, I'll open it up to you all for feedback.
I'm gonna go first on this.
Oh, wow.
You know, everywhere you go, someone's asking for a survey. How do we do it? Wherever we have interaction with the public, I think we need whether it's a Q code that you can scan or a little small 2 or 3. We don't need a 12-question survey on how was your experience with us, because let's face it, we don't want to do those. A simple 3-4 question survey, I think we'll get a lot of responses. And we all know people like to let us know when they got a bad experience.
Exactly.
Very few people want to give you a good review. It's hard to find a good review anywhere these days. But I think something like that is really simple to do to get public feedback, especially with planning, especially when you come to interact with paying a bill or something with us. You know, I think that goes a long way with the feedback. And it's simple. It can be going on all year, because if you say we're going to take feedback on this week, you know, people are going to load up on all the bad comments. Forget about the good experience that they had 2 weeks ago or 3 months ago. So if we can do something, a little simple survey, scan and go, or palm card, check the box, you know, that's one where we can get some feedback, I think, on the public part.
Everybody's got to go, so yeah, go ahead. Who's next? Debbie, you want to go, and we'll go this way?
Okay.
Let's have Debbie go, and
Well,
we'll come on.
Okay. So, bump is right on. Thank you. I mean, I'm right there with you. Surveys are a great tool to, for you guys and us both to see how we're doing. Take the temperature of the community. And, I mean, there's things that probably you guys don't even realize that's bothering people, and that's the way you find it out, is take a survey. So I would go along with that. I think data results with your employees is critical. It's feedback. How do they know how they're doing? How do they ever know how they're doing? Are they meeting goals? Are you providing them with goals? I'm sure you are, I think. Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
This would be added to what we currently do, yeah.
And so then that data gives them a roadmap of how they're doing and where they need to improve, or an attaboy. And so many times, I think in organizations, whether it's retail or government or whatever, trying to find out what, they feel like they're always told what's wrong. They're never told what's right about their performance. And I think that is even more critical, because it makes them want to work harder for you, for us and you and everything.
That's right. Thank you.
Let's see, well, first of all, I think that y'all are the ones up there in the government center. Y'all are a service industry. 100%, you don't create nothing, your whole thing is you service.
Well, we have a lot of people that create things as
Yeah,
1,300
no,
employees.
you hear
You're
me
talking
out
about
there.
just the manager's office, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I think you should be 100% solution oriented and not cause more problems in planning and several other things. Moving people 10 foot forward and 20 foot back. I do not understand why when someone comes in and they're wanting to do something, there should already be a sheet of this. All right? I ain't always been self-employed. When I first went to work for Crane Company, wherever I went out to work on crane, at the end of the day, I had to write a job description of what I did, everything. And that's how I got my money. I had to show that I was doing my job. And naturally, it had to be fixed, all right? But they should always be solution oriented. That'd be my biggest thing. They should strive beyond all means to find the people that we're supposed to be serving their best way and most cheapest possible way for them to accomplish what they need. You get
Well,
where
I
I'm going?
think this is a culture change goal for sure, and I think our goal is to best serve our citizens.
Don't make it
That's
hard.
different for every department. I think every department does that in different ways, but yeah, I hear that. We want to provide solutions. Anything else?
That pretty much covers it.
Okay, good, yeah, and I think we've got that in there. Yep.
Right? So, number one, under number one, for this category, under high performer organization, what are the gaps in strategic positions of county staff? That's a really good success. What's our timeline to fill these positions, even if these positions weren't funded in our 24-25 budget? All right. And on to number two. What are the action steps to respond to the community feedback? You don't ask for an opinion when you're not going to do anything with it. That's very dangerous. Under D, who are the key stakeholders? So define who the key stakeholders are. And that's all for that section.
So this category, there's a reason it's going quickly, because it's management's job. And so I think what council can do is say, this is where we would like to see us over the next 3 years and beyond. So I think it's really your job to do that, and I think you're going to be great at it. And I think this strategic plan and the involvement of staff is a great start, because you've got to get their buy-in. Listen, I own my own business. I've had many employees over the years, and the biggest asset to any company or organization are the employees. But if you don't have happy employees, then you don't have happy customers. And in this case, happy customers are the residents. And so, listen, I know who your unhappy employees are, and we all know who the unhappy employees are. We can tell, but so can the residents. And so it's a cultural change. And if I were in your position, and I want to talk specifically to you about this, because I'm in your position, but in a different business. So I think that when, and not everybody gets it, but the majority of people get it. Let's just take Public Works for a minute. So in my role as the county representative for District 2, I have dealt with, I cannot tell you how many people have leaks that have contacted me. And they send me an email, and a lot of them have already exhausted an effort with the county, or they are just finding out that they can call me, and they haven't even contacted the county a lot of times. Same thing happened with Blue Granite Water. I was a hub for a lot of stuff. So the way I've handled those folks is by reaching out to the person that's over Public Works and building over time a really good rapport with that person. So that the next thing that happens is my constituents' problem is solved, and sometimes it still takes a little while, but I respond to them and I get the job done for them, and then they send back a great little email saying thank you so much, and I haven't done anything. It's the Public Works Department that has solved the problem, but they've been agreeable to do it. They've been interested in helping the people, and it begins with, first of all, nice people, not unhappy, really ugly people, because you have automatically some resistance to people that act like that. But I think that it's possible that the the surveys come from county management, not from that department, not something that goes out, but it's, hey, I'm Josh Edwards, I'm the new county manager here, and you won't be new in 3 years, but I'm the county manager here, and I'd just like to see, how things went for you. Okay, so what you're getting is two things. You're getting a customer, a constituent who goes, oh my gosh, they care. And to take the wind out of someone's sails who's unhappy is to let them tell you that they're still maybe not happy. Let them vent a little bit and then they move on. But the second thing you're getting input on how those employees have dealt with it. And I think, more times than you might imagine, the people are probably happy with the service they've gotten. That's what I've found, that people people for the most part are not unhappy with York County, Now they might be temporarily unhappy because they've got a leak and it's been going on for 6 months and, they can't get anybody to help them and that kind of thing. But I also think that it's not the best facilitation of the problems for someone like a council member to be dealing directly with the staff member, okay? Because maybe some of you don't get the emails like I get, and maybe some of you don't do anything with them when you get them, and I'm not talking about y'all specifically, I'm just talking about in general, a council member, that's not a council member's job. So I have thought from the very start that how cool would it be to have a person in a position who takes those calls, who is that hub of a person, who
Ombudsman, an ombudsman.
who facilitates these things and then sends out a thing that's from you or from management or whatever and says, hey, these are the things. So I think there needs to be a thicker line between county council and staff members.
Yeah, 4C and 4E kind of speak to those
Yeah.
last couple of things you said.
Yeah.
I heard that.
And I think the staff involvement goes a long way. I think the buy-in and just, employee satisfaction is the beginning of a new culture. So you can't just hear from the constituents. You've got to do a yearly, you got to hear from the staff members.
That's right.
I'll let you come back. Let me just say a few things. All right, so what I hear, honestly, when it comes to council, we don't get involved until they've gotten mad, right?
That's
So something has happened, or like, so for instance, I've had this situation call where somebody called up and said, hey, this road over here has a tree that's overlining. And they called the county because that's the first one they know to call, and they tell them, we can't do anything about it, that's the state road. That's the response they get. Well, what I don't think, I think what I love about what you put in this, and I don't think there's anything I can argue with on this one. There's other ones I can argue with, but on this one, I don't know that I can argue with you. I think it has more to do with educating staff as to how to deal with the public, because it doesn't get to us until they get mad. And what I see is, like with that road issue, they need to understand jurisdictionally, we don't have control over a state road. If there's a tree that's about to fall over, and it's on a state road, we can't do it. Otherwise, we create a severe liability for the county if we do that. But what I think, if someone that they get a hold of at the county says, hey, you know what, this is a state road, but I'm gonna call my contact at the state, and I'm gonna make sure that they're aware of this so that they know that this is their job, that is a whole different message than we can't do anything about it because it's a state road. It has so much to do with it, and this is what I think is critically important, is you guys, you don't have problems with council until they have gotten mad at somebody there. And so I think a lot of times our staff is working as hard as they can, but they don't realize that these people don't understand that are calling them what the situation is. And I think educating them about, hey, I understand your concern, and I know that a lot of the municipalities do have, I think what Allison's talking about is an ombudsman, somebody who is like the person that is the hub of a problem. Let's try to solve it before it gets here, because then what happens is you got council members calling you, causing you problems. And I think at the end of the day, I think our county employees want to do a good job. They want to get it right. And I think some of it's all about communication again. This is, to me, I don't have a problem with what y'all proposed here, with the exception of educate folks about how to communicate with the community when they first reach out. in a way that helps them understand it so that they don't take it up to the next level. And I think that's very much an educational piece. But it's also an urgency piece, you know? There's nothing more frustrating for me than to get a call from somebody who says, there's a tree about to fall in the road, and then they get a call and like, nobody acts like they cares. Act like you care. Care. Let's fix it. Because you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna call DOT and I'm gonna call Jason Johnson. I'm gonna say, this tree's about to fall. That could have much easily been handled by somebody there instead of me or Bump or Allison having to call them. So that y'all know, because it's preserving that. And I know that there were some other folks that like raised their hands after we talked, but when I looked through this, I mean, the thing that made me most excited was create department strategic plans with KPI accountability. Every department needs to know, how do they play into this role? And how do we make sure that they're equipped enough with information to know how to communicate with the public appropriately? Because I can't tell you, I spend most of my day when they understand the process, it helps them. And a lot of times they don't understand that process. Just having a comment say, I can't help you, is the part that causes the problem.
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned about council not contacting staff when there's an issue. Over the years, well, I've always had, if I get a call, I'll say, hey, call Johnson over at DOT, use his number. If he don't respond to you, call me back. Had a perfect case this morning. The guy calls me, his road's been flooding. Obviously, everybody's road flooded last week. We were out there in January and February trying to take care of the problem. He said, well, Mr. Roddy, you told me if it's not taken care of, call you back. He called me back this morning. I immediately got Eric Record on the phone. Say, all right, we'll put you back in contact with who's supposed to be taking care of this. We had a 3-way call. They talked about it. They pulled up the work order, said, yeah, we were out there in January, we were out there in February. This part, you know, he pulled it up on the map. I know it's not our job to do the ombudding, but sometimes you need that connector piece when someone's gone through and hasn't gotten a result. The first call shouldn't be to your council member if you've got a flooding issue. If they call you, give them to whoever's that issue is supposed to be handled by. Give staff a chance to work it, and then if they say, hey, don't work out, call me back. Let me know how they handled it. How, did they respond? Because let's face it, if we do call up and speak to a department head or county managers, we do feel like we'll get a better response than Joe Public. But we should be responding to Joe Public the same way we respond to a councilman as well.
I think if there's one thing that I would add to this plan, it would be y'all designated ombudsman for these problem things so that when council gets it, we want to support you. So obviously, Josh, you're a new county manager. You're in here, you're supporting new plans. We want to support you. Sometimes we don't know if your folks are getting that. Who is the person that we should start with before then we start getting in your way? Because then we get in your way, and then sometimes people go up and create problems.
Right.
How do we put a buffer there so that we can get that problem resolved? And we're not in the middle of it. It will save me a lot of time, and I know from other council members calling me, a lot of us time.
Yeah, and that's really what we mean by 4E. So develop internal communication procedures between council and staff to ensure effective information sharing. So we do need to put on paper how best we can handle these, how we can make sure we're addressing these before they get to y'all, or if they get to y'all, how you hand them off to us so that Kevin and I can work with the directors to solve them. But as we grow a plan, I think there is the potential to have one point of reference for y'all, you know, a Bud's person of sorts. What I've seen work in other places is what you call a CRM tool, so it's a customer relationship management tool, where all the challenges and the issues and the questions are going into a software, and there's somebody who owns that software and responds to all of them and is responsive and working with departments to make sure the work's getting done. So that's a person at the end of the day that we don't have right now. So that's a long-term conversation with y'all over the next 3 years. But I think that's a real opportunity because that would make a big difference.
You know, at the retreat, we mentioned like being able to send out that list of numbers, I think we all need that same list of numbers, so if somebody calls me about an issue, I don't know every department head, every person who's in each department, we can have that little cheat sheet, say, hey, this, I
Have
know,
you
I
talked,
know,
have you talked to the department head first before you
Right.
come to me? Yeah.
we need that number.
It's the same thing that I've talked with
Yeah.
Josh before, like when it comes to a planning issue, Josh, how do you want me to handle a planning concern? Do you want me to just refer them to Josh first, so that, like, but people get entrenched in their positions? So I do think having a plan for all of us to know, who do we go to first?
That's
And then
right.
if they can't fix it, then we know they come back to us and
Yep.
there's a bigger issue.
And that's our commitment. for-
And the York County website, it needs to be kindergarten. It's still, people can't navigate it. They get, heck, it's hard to find junk on there if you know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, it needs to be 5-year-old proof right there.
I agree with that.
I would like for y'all to change this plan to reflect it to where it's easier. Folks don't know it, we all know it, we don't know it. And we want to support management to make y'all do that.
Yep.
Same time, we don't know how to get it to the right hands before we start getting mad about it.
Yep.
Right?
I think that's great. Yep. If we can solve that, we're doing a lot of good work.
Tonight wasn't really about solutions, right? Tonight is more about defining the what. So we need to get back to helping ask your questions, what, and not solutions.
Yeah, but we're getting feedback, and we're fleshing this out, so we're figuring out where y'all are at with this. So I do think we're getting good information, and I think we're gonna be able to respond to this in totality in our next meeting, so
We are all about y'all high-performing your organization.
thank you. Y'all's organization too.
That's great feedback, so we appreciate it.
That's right.
Is it bathroom break?
You want to take a,
Quick
I know.
3-minute break?
Tommy had to sneak out.
No,
so.
I'm not talking about you, so we're
Okay,
going.
good stuff, y'all. We're gonna take a quick 3-minute break.
The city has it on, the city has it on those. They actually have somebody, it's like, you got a problem with the one person, here's your problem.
That's the theme, right? You know what you should.
Love that job.
You're gonna be graying out.
I can do it
Dig
all day,
into
every
it,
day.
find it.
I do it all day, every day.
Thank you. Thank you for
Did you say you would love that job?
I would love that job.
so next we heard from council the goal of parks. And so to save time, I'm going to do a high-level overview of this, and then we'll just jump into the feedback. So the short goal is premier parks, and council's feedback in regards to parks are as follows: economic driver, preservation, partnerships, and to identify citizens' needs and wants. And so staff developed the strategies that you'll see on your parks. They're in bold again. Establish York County as a premier recreational destination that offers a wide variety of recreational experiences. And I think something that you'll notice under this strategy is the initiative to develop a county parks identity. And you saw that in the high-performing organization goal as well, is to develop a brand for York County. And so it was important for the Parks Department is for people to know, hey, this is a county park. It's not, it doesn't belong to a city or another entity, but it's a county park, and to brand our parks accordingly across the board. So you'll see that initiative was to develop a county parks identity, and then we can recruit tourism from that. And then we want to partner with key stakeholders to promote our recreational assets that the county has to offer. And then something we need to hear from council tonight is number 2. Staff wants more clarification, if you will, on if council is wanting to preserve and protect the county's natural resources or conserve. And we just need council's feedback. And so both are ways to protect. But preserve is along the lines of open space. You're preserving it to be open space, protecting the natural habitats. Or you wanting to conserve the land where you're protecting it as well, but you're also providing it a sustainable use as maybe a park. So so staff would like clarification if council's desire or will is to conserve or preserve the county's natural resources to ensure sustainability. So if you can just let me know that when we go around, I can give that feedback to staff and we can make changes accordingly. Next, we're going to collaborate with stakeholders to support and enhance parks and recreations experiences throughout the county. And this is just, we're going to create an engagement campaign with our stakeholders. How can we all come together to promote the recreational opportunities throughout the county? And then last, expand parks and recreation facilities and services to enhance the quality of life. And so you'll see under there that we're going to prioritize recommendations for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan that is taking place right now with the community survey. That's how we're receiving feedback from the community on the plan. And then we want to make sure that ensure our parks and recreation facilities are staffed at a level that provides safe and consistent, high-quality experiences to our residents. So it's a high-level view of the parks goal, but ultimately, we want to have a premier parks and be known of having premier parks. So I'll open it up to you all.
So what I normally would have done is jumped ahead of this at the last one. Like I would have said, let's take it one step down. Debbie, are you prepared to have your comments now? We can,
I can
start. Okay. Let everybody go first.
So,
I'm last in everything.
No, you aren't. You were first at the very beginning.
okay, so this, well, first of all, this one is hard because we don't know what our little guy's gonna tell us.
Master plan, right? It's
Yeah.
coming, but it won't be done until November.
I mean, I almost think you could set this one aside until you get that master plan back, and then, because I think it's gonna be very interesting. He could have things on there that would be totally opposite of what we're gonna talk about tonight. So that's why I think you could save some time on this, but preserve and conserve. That's a deep question.
Mhm.
I just think parts of the county it's preserve and parts of the county it's conserve. I don't know how you could just say, oh, we're only gonna do preservation. You just can't do that. So,
Okay.
that's my thoughts.
Do you mind reiterating what y'all's distinction is between preserve and conserve? Can you just say that again?
Yes, so they're both ways of protection, but preserve is you're saving it almost like open space, it's to be untouched. And then conserve is you're protecting that land again, but you're gonna use it for a sustainable use, and maybe it's to put a park on. So preserve is leaving it untouched, leaving it in its natural atmosphere, protecting its resources on that land. And then the conserve is you're protecting it, but you're gonna use it for sustainable use. And do you have any other way to describe it?
One's California, and one's
Oh,
over
Lord, don't get us there.
So-
All right, come on.
So open
That's why they have
Come
so
on.
many wildfires, because they won't take care of the junk.
I think part of it is to think about is, there's open space just to protect land and allow nature to be nature. And then there's purchasing property to make sure that we have land for future parks in 20 years.
Talking about public access is the distinction.
Yeah, and you can always have one small trail, right? But that does change the nature of the space, but I think in theory, are we buying land for a future park? Or are we buying land just to make sure it's protected forever? I think that's how I think about it too. So that's just another way to think about it, Trish's point.
And one other addition is that we did run the draft goals by the consultant with the master plan, and he worked with us to formulate some of the language as we know that we're getting ready to unveil this plan.
Mhm.
So just to let you all know that as well.
Well, one more item on that. So would that not have to be the wishes of the people that are selling the land?
Not if it's purchased.
I
If we
mean,
purchase it, we can do
So not if
it.
it's purchased or in the conservation easement, it's like set. So if they approve of the conservation easement, then,
that's conservative.
Preserve.
well, not necessarily, it's conserved because it may not have public access. I mean, to me, I'm hearing you say the distinction between preserve and conserve. Conserve is public access of some sort, public benefit.
Mhm.
But then we got to sell off commercial rights.
First thing I wrote down is we can't do neither if we don't own it.
Yeah.
If we don't own it, we can't say what anybody can do with it. If you look around Rock Hill, and I don't think our role or our goal here is to have a park around every single pocket, every single community in York County. But if you look around where I grew up at, every pretty much pocket around Rock Hill had a park. You got Boyd Hill, you got Flint Hill, you have Sunset Park, you got Army Park, you got White Street Park, you got Oakwood Acres, you have Confederate Park. That's the role and goal of a municipality, to do that inside the city limits. I don't think that's what we want our goal to be, that every so many, couple hundred feet or close to every 300 home neighborhood, you got park in the county area. I don't think that's our goal. Our goal was, when we first started talking about this, was quality of life, passive recreation. I don't want us to get off on a tangent of thinking that every piece of property that we do own, we have to do some kind of park with it. That's not the goal. That's when you get to the conservation or preservation. Some of it, we're just gonna have it just to kind of keep the green space. And that was more taken care of when we were pushing more of conservation easement, people donating land just to preserve it and conserve it as green space, not to be developed. That's still an option that saves us money if we get people and families to do that and give it to the county. But I'm not on board with thinking that that's the mindset, to put a park close to every single cluster area throughout the county in the rural area, because our municipalities, that's kind of their goal. That's what they should be doing. Because that's just kind of the role and goal of a municipality. Ours should be what it's set out to be, the more passive. In some areas, there's organized recreation, but we're not getting 30 parks, 40 parks across the county, thinking that the goal is to program them, charge to use them, recoup that money. You know, I don't think that's our goal to do it that way. And maybe I'm the only one that thinks that way, but I see on here about using park metrics and current population to identify future areas. That means pretty much we just don't want to go in and obviously create every area. Some is just a natural area for walking trails. Some we can go in and create some walking trails, but we don't want to try to force a lot of parks if it's not obviously the right spot, the right cost, because let's face it, these things are going to get expensive. And when you talk about taking care of them, talk about staffing them, we're doubling and tripling, sometimes quadrupling what we are, the budget to go out and do some of these things. And I'll end with this, we still try to get that parking district full, Madam Chair.
I got you.
Okay.
I got you.
But that's just kind of, you know, because we said several years ago, we didn't want to get into the parks business to the point where we were programming and running and competing with our municipalities. Our parks should look and function different from what the city parks do.
And the Parks Master Plan is going to help flesh that out for y'all, and y'all are going to have options from that. Yep, y'all will be able to speak into that.
Okay, so back to my original topic, where I was a little off topic on number one, but we really have our hands full of parks. And we've done master studies over the last few years. We did a master study, a master plan for Worth Mountain and Nanny's Mountain, and what we found out from a lot of the people there was that leave it alone. We don't have to develop every single thing that we have. Now, I think there's some enhancements and minor things that could be done to both of those areas. Certainly some safety things and that kind of thing. But we spent a lot of time. Christy and Tom and I spent a lot of time on a committee of how many people on that committee? Like 12 people on a committee talking about Riverbend, which became Catawba Bend. And we did public input surveys, we did public input meetings, we did all kinds of things, and it's frustrating for me that we're doing it all again. We're doing the same thing with the Bethel Lake Wiley. We're overlooking, we're doing a whole nother level of getting community input on every park, and we've done it. We've already done this, and so it's just more and more delay. When you talk about preservation and conservation, I don't totally agree with the definitions here, but I don't think it's the county's role to own conservation easements per se. And most people that are looking to put their property in a conservation easement aren't looking to donate it to the county. So I think we have York County Forever set up. It was set up a long time ago, and the goal of York County Forever was to help fund conservation easements in a partnership with Nation Board Land Trust. Okay, and I think we need to relook at is that still the goal? Are we still looking to partner with a land trust? We had a thing at South Carolina Association of Counties, and Watts asked the question of, do we need somebody to go out and be talking to residents? And, my response and Raleigh West's response was, that's the job of a land trust. That's not a county job to go out and be talking to people about putting their property in a conservation easement. That's not what, the people don't want the government to come knocking on their door looking to talk to them about their land. That to me is a huge negative. And so I don't think that conservation easements are the way we should go. Now, they're properties we got in Bethel Lake Wiley Park District, Preservation Park District is what it's called. And there are conservation easements on those properties, but that's not what they are. They have uses written in. They have, what do we want to do with those properties? That's all defined in the conservation easements that are on those properties. So I also feel strongly, and the people here from Lake Wiley will probably tell you too, that public access, that they're not interested really in us buying properties that they can't access. I mean, I've been listening to them for 4 years, and that's part of the reason it's gotten old, that we just continue to rehash. What are we going to do? We started out with an intent, And we just haven't made it, we're still on first base. I mean, sometimes we haven't left the first mound there, and on most of it, we haven't gotten anywhere, really. And so it's frustrating. I had hoped that we would have shown the people what we were gonna do with their tax money, and that they would be interested in more. And I have to say that we've been a bad example of what York County's gonna do with tax money when we buy properties like that. And so I think we need a.
You're talking about the special tax district.
Yeah, I am, but it's taxpayer funded, and, you know, it's just, I feel very strongly about a lot of this, and I could talk probably the rest of the night about it. But I feel like, if the county's gonna purchase property, it needs to be for public use, number one, and that's it. If the county wants conservation easement, then you need to fund York County Forever. You need to make that a priority and get back to however that began, and, you know, relook at that. Just reevaluate York County Forever. And, you know, there was a time when I thought that York County Forever was set up to go out and find the land. Go and look, you know, find the property owners in the land. And they had a list of properties that they were interested in, a lot of them in your area, Christy. And that's not what they've ever done. So it's taken Nation Forest Land Trust to do some of that. And I think in the near future, you're going to see a difference in the Nation Forest Land Trust, and they'll be a little more probably proactive in doing that over the next 6 to 12 months.
Just interject, since I've been here though, we've doubled the amount of land and conservation easement in York County Forever. And I can tell you for sure, like Lindsay Walker, they searched out properties for those conservation easements. I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, but you know, the numbers are, they've not quite tripled, but they've gone from like 4,000 something acres to almost 2,000 something acres. So they are, York County Forever is a success.
I'm not saying they're not
disagree
a
with all your
success.
points.
Oh, I'm not, I didn't say, you misunderstood me.
Can I just interject this, though? This is what's always interesting to me, because I hear us saying preservation is really, I want to get the terminology right, because
look at
preservation
the
means
definition.
not public access, but we're creating like green space that helps with stormwater and all kinds. I mean, it really helps our community, but I want to make sure our terminology is right, because I'm hearing York County Forever is really pursuing easements for green space, which is really, you're saying conservation,
Sort of
but it's not
both.
conservation, it's preservation. It's only conservation. When we're talking here, I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing. Conservation is when we allow some sort of public use or public access, right? Whether it's a public, I mean, I want to make sure I understand what we're talking about. Is that
They're
right?
used interchangeably,
Yeah.
and you can
But
have
we
a
gotta
preserve.
we gotta be,
And I think
when
the
we're
important-
talking through this, I think we need to be consistent about our terminology, because I want to know what you started this off with. Preservation is protecting land, and that's what York County Forever has done, which has allowed some of that. It's when you cross the gap of public access or a public, I want to make sure I'm right on this, that we hit conservation. Make sure I'm clear on that. 'Cause
And
you're saying,
we can fine tune the definitions for y'all, because the terms are interchangeable, but I think the key is do we want to buy land for public use, or do we want to buy land to protect it and make sure nothing
I
happens?
think there is value in both. There is value in creating stormwater mitigation credits for having a whole 100 acres that maybe the public can't go on, but you know what? It soaks up all the water, so the developments on either side of it don't help that. So I think that's the distinction that I want to make sure we're clear on, because there's two equally important issues here. There's one of protecting the property, which doesn't put it on the county taxpayer dole. We're not paying for it,
Right.
but it has value to the taxpayers all around it. And then the county taxpayer, you know, help, which is, this is gonna be for a county conservation, is what I'm hearing you'll say. This is what helps our community, like, have access to it, or there's a public component to that. So that's the part that,
So we'll work to define those terms for y'all, make sure we're using them right, but 2A we got from York County Forever, right? So that was an idea from them that they thought would be useful. to do. So what we'll do is we'll get the right definitions, we'll flesh it out in our response to y'all, show which is which, and we'll make sure.
And I don't want to interject, except we had staff, like we're talking about two different
Yeah,
terminologies.
we are.
So we'll keep going through the loop.
But as long as y'all, in general, see value in both options depending on the situation, then we can have both reflected in the strategic plan.
All right, so up until this point, I've stuck to very short answers because that's what I thought we were asked to do, so I'm gonna take the liberty to elaborate now, okay? And this is just my opinion. So, I think, first of all, with the Parks Initiative, our committee hired a consultant, and we're waiting for those results to come back. And so we'll know more about this when we get those results. So, this is a difficult one to address, but I am gonna address a couple of things that I think are true. One council member out of 7. Number one, we are the York County Council, and we don't make decisions for municipalities, we make decisions for the unincorporated areas of York County, right? Right. So, when you look out into the future is, what does the unincorporated area of York County look like? Right? Right. So, think about it this way. When annexation stops, and believe me, York County gets smaller and smaller every year because we're getting annexed. But when the unincorporated area footprint of York County, unincorporated area of York County stops, then we have a static footprint to start building upon. Because there won't be much land, just like now, left in the incorporated areas to build. So the unincorporated area of York County that we govern over is going to be what develops and builds, right? Which means you will likely have active and passive recreation in the unincorporated areas of the county because the municipalities will be too far away from those areas to provide those services. So when you look long term, I'll get into one of my comments here and then I'll kind of wrap up, but when you look long term, I think what's really important for this council is to have a strategic county master plan for development that's critical to what the unincorporated footprint of York County can look like long-term with intentional planning associated with density. Why do I say density? Because if this is what you call density, then this is what you call development. And the green space and the farmland you talk about won't exist. So I'm not saying that we need to build skyscrapers, but I am saying that we need to go up to conserve this, right? So I believe that density is important. I believe aesthetics are important long-term for the county. When we look at developing the unincorporated areas of this county, the aesthetics, the intentional look of what the county looks like is important. Green space. I think green space is important. Talk about that more in a minute. Farmland's important. Residential with development requirements is important. You can have residential with green space and parks, not paid for by us, but provided by the developers if that's part of your initiative. Commercial, industrial, schools, and taking our natural assets into consideration as we develop these areas out, I think are important. And that's being intentional. Now, and we'll go back to what came up earlier, because this did come up down in Charleston, and that's about green space and farmland. What came up was what I brought up to Christie a year ago after I joined council, and that was be intentional about going out and talking to the 200 or fewer farmers that we have here in York County. There are less than 200 sanctioned farms. There are 200 or so farms, but there are less than 200 that are actually certified farms. So Florence County is actually going out and talking to their farmers. Now, why are they talking to their farmers? And I'll just use this room as an example, not talking down to anybody in this room. But it's a high probability that none of us in here have planned what happens to us when we walk out that door tonight and get hit by a car. What's going to happen with what you have? And 90% of people in York County, if not greater, are in that same boat, in South Carolina, the United States too. People don't plan. So farmers don't plan either. So the unintentional consequence of a farmer owning 100, 200, 300, 500,000, 10,000 acres, they haven't thought about what's gonna happen, or either they just don't wanna deal with what's gonna happen when they die. So the first one passes, it goes to the spouse owns the land, it's their land to do what they want to with, the spouse goes, well, I don't really know what I want to do either, but I'll get to it one day. And they get to it when their children inherit it, and they don't care anything about farming, so it gets sold and developed. So what Florence County's doing, that I think we might ought to entertain, which is what I shared with Christie a year ago, was that I feel like there is an educational opportunity for us to get out and talk. If we're interested in preserving green space and not having to buy it all, which there's no way you can buy it all, that doesn't make any sense. But to have a conversation about somebody that has 500 acres of land and work with them, not twisting their arm, but working with them to say, why don't you carve out 100 acres over here, because this is real prime for development, and we're going to have water and sewer come this way. By the way, I said a minute ago, when the footprint of York County stops, get annexed, is when we get water and sewer on our borders to prevent it from getting annexed. And until water and sewer gets around our borders, whether it's our water, sewer, or somebody else's water and sewer, the county gets smaller and smaller. So eventually, we'll need a county council, right? But the sooner we can get water and sewer, then development occurs too, unless you don't want to put water and sewer out. But go back to the farmers. So my question would be this: what benefit might be gained by meeting with the farmers and large property owners to educate them on survivorship plans? Educating them might be on a 500 acre tract. You say that 100 acres over there is absolutely great for commercial development because water and sewer is running straight through here for this. And it's zoned, or it should be zoned. Our plan calls for it. And then you can conserve this middle part, or you can conserve all of it if you want to. What I'm saying is you help them come up with a plan. You're not forcing them, you're not incenting, you're having a conversation.
You're educating.
You're educating, yes. And the thing is that people are not talking to them about their options. Therefore, what are we getting? We're getting the passive result of not talking about what someone's options are with them and educating them on what they can get through conservation easements and anything else, and letting it be their decision. And I think if we did that, we'd have a better outcome than what we have now. So anyway, that's number two, the number two in that particular section.
What's the definition of registered farmer? I'm curious.
Of a what?
A registered farm.
I don't even know that we need to, I don't even know that we need to say farmer. I think what we need to say is a property owner who has a certain amount of property, because what we're talking about is, what do we want to do in terms of preservation and conservation? We can debate the context here, but when it comes to preservation, part of that is just a proactive educational component. How do you want to do this? Because it has huge impact for our community. And I hate to interject this, but I'm
That's
just
why I
saying.
said farmers, large property, and landowners.
Yep. I think
Country
anybody that
folks.
owns, anybody that
Country
owns certain 20 acres or more, I mean,
I'll wrap up.
honestly, I think it's,
I'll wrap up.
Yeah, this is all good stuff, though.
This is my last one in this section. Under number 4, expanded parks and recreation. I just have to ask the question, obviously not going to answer tonight, but what is the potential and the benefits of creating indoor recreation opportunities?
And the master plan is going to bring all that up, as y'all have all talked with the consultants. And
So that's really it for me.
That's what I said.
Just my opinion.
Good. Tommy?
Tom, you got anything?
last but
Oh,
not
yeah,
least.
got a little bit. Remember in that class down at Association County, I kept the whole thing over 30 minutes trying to
Oh,
explain
here
to
you go.
them.
We did spend an extra hour in that meeting.
But I was
It an
100%
extra
right.
hour.
Everything we're talking about here, conservation, preservation, until you change mindsets of people, you ain't accomplished nothing. Believe me, because I done seen too many good farms, kids get them and they got them.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah. And I also question when you talk about taking taxpayer dollars and buying certain property, and that the government's already the biggest landholder that there is. So that's some issues. I do think any of our county parks and all, it should be passive. I think that getting into the serious stuff, leave that up to the municipalities. And another thing, I don't like the growth. I don't like none of it, and I really don't like doing anything that may attract more people wanting to move in here. I mean, seriously, I mean, we holler this on one hand, but we're doing this on the other. But I think a lot of this kind of goes back to down there when we was at the meeting and we went into finance and budget part of it, and them folks in there talking like a dollar still had 100 pennies. It ain't worth 6 cents, and that's just cause it's wrote on paper and ink. So I think a lot of this is going to be determined on the future state of our economy and the country in itself.
Tommy, I'm not walking out of the comments.
You walk out in the
Down
Sit and suffer, Watts. Where you going?
Oh, we gotta
But
keep
it's
going.
the truth.
We gotta keep going, y'all.
You
We
see
got-
it
we got
every
more
day.
goals. We got
I mean,
more goals.
people act like we're not seeing a change in the whole blame country, and nobody's willing to accept it. And my other opinion is, and I'll tell you this right quick, I think that it would do our country a lot of good if people would quit worrying so much about playing and entertainment as they would us surviving and getting our country back in.
All right,
in
so
order.
we're almost at 8 o'clock, y'all.
Well,
I wanna make sure, Christie,
Hey.
you wanna share your
Did I
thoughts?
say anything that
You
ain't
got
something?
anything else, Tom? You got anything else?
What would
Here's
be
what
the-
I'm gonna say, so when I first read this, one of the things that kind of hit me was, our first priority should be our residents and their quality of life. And so I hear this part, like opportunities to enhance residents and visitors' quality. To me, the uniqueness of the county is, I want our residents to have first choice at everything we have.
Mhm.
Everything we do,
Right.
I want our goals to be them first. And you know what, this whole other issue of like attracting folks here, I understand that it's important, but that's secondary to me. So to me, that needs to be a priority, that's to me a fixation when we talk about strategies for our community. And I do think that everything that I've talked about with council was that our folks will be passive versus active, because we're a complement to municipalities. And ours is more of access to nature, access to our preserving, areas. I guess conserving is what I need to say, because we do want to provide access to the parks that we have. But the part that I took issue with too was like, it seemed to focus on expansion and all that stuff. We've got plenty of existing parks and property that we aren't fully taking advantage of it. And I think we need to do that right. I think we need to do that with quality in mind. And I don't think that we need to skimp on that, because I think you can really go sideways trying to do too much at one time. And to me, that's what our goal was. If we are to talk about like conservation and preservation, I think that we divide this up. I mean, and to use y'all's terminology, I think preservation is, I do think that our York County Forever folks should do, we should embolden them to do a lot more education. Property owners that have 20+ acres, they should be able to understand, look, if I donate this property, you know how much, there is a huge benefit to us if they do that, and we don't even own it, we don't have any connection to it, but they're now soaking up some of the stormwater problems that we have. That, to me, that should be a separate initiative. When it comes to conservation, and I agree with you, we've commissioned this study. How do we go about it? I will tell you, I have a little bit of reservation with that, because there are a few people that respond to these studies. this is the thing that always bothers me. There's like a handful of people, like, they want a skateboard park, or, you know, people that want one thing. They'll organize and they'll go ask for this, but that's really not what people want. What the majority of people want is someplace to go walk, have a picnic with their family, go walk somewhere, and it be accessible, and it be affordable. And I think we need to focus on our residents. Number one, our residents, not how do we make money off of this? How do we create, I think that's where the municipalities do that. They create that. You have to go pay for their you know, their parks. I want people to be able to go out there anytime you got a kid, go out there and do that. I think that's where we need to look. And I do think, though, we need to look broadly, and Bob, I heard your comment. I do think that we need to look at, I don't have a place, and I live on the south side of town. I don't have a place to go walk around that's close by, because the schools really don't want you to go there. You know, there's no place to go walk a mile so that I don't gain my extra 10. Like, how do you find those pocket parks that are passive, that don't require a whole ton of resources, but that breed value into the community? And so, I mean, I guess my question for you right now, Josh, is do you have enough information about where the collectivity is of council to be able to move forward? Or are we divided? I mean, we're all saying our own individual pieces here.
I think we do, and what we have going for us is there's a parks master plan that's gonna be coming to y'all, and it's in the schedule in the workshop, you know, in terms of November. What we've tried to do with Catherine's help, she's been very helpful on this and been a leader on this goal, is to give placeholders in this goal, to Debbie's point, right? So since we don't have that plan, y'all haven't said exactly what you wanna do. Strategy 4 is really written as a placeholder so that once y'all give feedback on the Parks Master Plan, we can slide it in there, okay? So yes, we've heard y'all say passive versus active, and we've heard y'all say focused on residents, and we've got all this other stuff that y'all have shared. I think we've got enough to move forward, but we all have to be aware that once the Parks Master Plan comes in November, and y'all give your feedback on that, that's what Strategy 4 is really gonna be.
But I think York County Forever is it's a committee. So right, when I want to make sure that I'm heard clearly, I think preservation is just as important as conservation. And if you don't have the right people out there educating the public about, hey, I own this property, I might have tax incentives if I put this into a conservation easement, but it doesn't put this on the county responsibility. But it helps us with stormwater problems and that sort of thing. That's where I just think, like, they're not going to have that support unless they have your support from management and individuals out there actually reaching the people to share with them in a meaningful way, not like I mean, I think Allison's point is very well made. How you approach people and how you share with them what they can do is just as important as what the facts are. But how do we support York County Forever? I mean, you can give them money, but if you don't have the right people out there promoting it.
Right, I think manager's office, we gotta go back to staff and say, okay, hearing what we heard tonight from council, how do we better write these initiatives to cover both?
And one thing I heard, Watts's comments, that was really great idea of sending out some mass mailing to the people that own land of a certain size. And what came to my mind was 50 acres is to me a meaningful thing that I'd consider sending mailing to. Christie, you mentioned 20. Is there a consensus on council what y'all think, or would y'all want that the York County Fair Committee to sort of decide? Because what we can do internally, we can generate a list of properties that are above that size and put out a mailing just with information. And that's sort of outside of what's coming tonight. I thought it was a great idea.
I love it.
And I know they sort of cherry pick things they're going after, but a mass mailing.
I love it, but I would be very careful about drawing a line, because what about 20 acres in Allison's district is different than 20 acres in like Tommy's out in the middle of Sharon. I mean, I think it's difficult to draw an acreage line. I think you should say if you own property, you know, that's in excess of, you know, a certain amount, you qualify. I mean, you
I
don't.
think what you do is, if you were creating a just don't know if this is the truth, but this is my reaction to it. If you were creating a
hang on a minute, let's open this up. I hear Allison say that she thinks it's a terrible idea.
I think you're overstepping on the, every area, most areas of South Carolina, Mecklenburg County, Gaston County, they have land trusts, and that is the role of a land trust. They understand it, they know how to reach out to the people, they know what to say to the people, they are armed and to go out and, I mean, yeah.
But why would you be opposed to, like, if I have 25 acres over here and I wanna conserve it, what's the objection to that?
You're gonna send out something with York County to property owners to talk to them about what they can do with their land? That is a huge, huge, just red flag.
Wow.
It's a,
What's the objection to anybody who owns a certain amount of property considering putting, I mean, not many people want to put their land in conservation. They would prefer to build it out and make as much money as they
Let the
can.
land trust.
well, it's not gonna be, you're not gonna get a lot of people, you're gonna get a small percentage of the people that wanna do that. And you have to
But
reach
how
out.
does that hurt somebody if you say, here's this initiative? How does that hurt that? To know that that initiative exists? Because there's nothing statutorily that limits it to a certain amount of acreage. If they all have it, access to the information, I don't know why. How is that a drawback, just for people to have that information? Help me understand that.
Well, let me make this comment while she thinks about that. I've been on council long enough to know that we're talking about when property's passed on from generation to generation, granddaddy passes away, the grandkids get it, they're rushing to sell it. We're not gonna stop that, because we've had so many people come before this council and say, you're standing in the way of my retirement. I held on to this land to sell to fund my retirement, and we've allowed them to rezone it, to sell it, so they can get a windfall of cash, so they can live out their golden years. So it's not only the grandkids looking to sell the land when they get it.
But this, I guess my question, Bob, is this doesn't stop them from doing that. It just arms them with an opportunity that if they want to say that,
I think.
here's an opportunity for you to ask for, here are options here. If you want to do this and this helps you, how do I need to say, preserve it?
So you're gonna refer them to a land trust?
No, I'm just saying it gives them information. How does
What is the
that
information you
inform
wanna give them?
how preservation works, how conservation easements work?
Do you know how that?
I do know how they work. I don't think they know.
All right, y'all, we got three more goals, so I wanna make
We got
sure.
2 more minutes.
It's not our role to come up with a solution on it, we're just talking about. the
I just don't
opportunity
understand why you wouldn't
and
arm
what we
everybody
might
with
have to
the
do with the
information.
opportunity.
Yeah, so I think we can share resources and we can connect people to information. What we'll do, we'll take what we heard, we'll try to make some edits to this to give more specificity to the initiatives based on what we're hearing. The question I have for you, Madam Chair, is do you want to keep going? It's
No,
8
I mean,
o'clock.
I think at this point, if you guys don't need a clarification from the first 3 points, I'm prepared to move forward. I don't know what council's
You
like.
need to move forward from parks.
Yeah, let's move forward to the
You wanna
other
keep going?
three.
Okay.
I would love to move forward.
Okay, so let's try to, you want to keep going a little
Yeah, I
faster
think
during the
so.
last
Yep,
three?
let's do it.
Okay, I'm good to get this thing done tonight. All right, so the next one is grow responsibly. And so, as y'all can tell, and we're not gonna get into the details as we introduce this, but what we heard from y'all in your SWAT and in our retreat was, you want more flexibility in terms of updating the ordinances that aren't working. You want staff to be able to explain how we fix certain ordinances, give opportunity for addressing them in a more quick fashion. Y'all brought up affordability, the attainability of housing, specifically workforce housing, and what we consider 8% of AMI. You also talked about quality development, right? You want to attract a certain type of development, and then you want to think about ways that we can get developers to pay more towards infrastructure. Okay, so those are the big takeaways from y'all. So that's what staff took to develop the strategies that you see before you, which you can see we've got one about being responsive to making those changes in the code. All right, so my goal someday is that y'all don't call it recode, call it code. That's how I'm going to consider success. 3 to 5 years from now, you see me smiling, somebody called it the code. Okay? So anyway, so how do we collaborate better with the public and private partners in the county to develop more attainable housing? Right? Are there opportunities? You see some examples of what we could do. And then what can we do in terms of making our community more attractive and aligning infrastructure expansion with development? Right, so those are the 4 areas. I want to kick it to y'all. So I guess, Debbie, you started last time, so does that mean?
I think Bump jumped ahead.
Allison.
Okay, so it's Allison. All right, with that, we're open to y'all's feedback.
Okay. Let me flip back to one up here. I agree with on the recode versus code. I'm tired of hearing about recode too.
All right.
That's number one. I think I agree with Tom on number 2.
Okay.
I think that is something that, now a couple people here are more, they represent mostly municipality, and I think if affordable housing is something that they want to consider for that area, I think that's great. But we're back to definitions, and we don't really have a definition of small business yet, and we really don't have a definition of affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very subjective, and it's different in different areas. I mean, affordable housing in Fort Mill is different than affordable housing in York, and so it sounds great coming out of a politician's mouth, but the reality of it is that it's got to be vetted, and I think that's very important. Gosh, I'm not trying very hard not to say and it's making, I'm thinking so hard about it, I'm saying it more and more, but the part down here that is a little concerning to me also is to amend the urban services boundary. I haven't seen anything in York County yet that really didn't want to expand the urban services boundary, because I think ultimately the county is looking to grow. So, and expanding the urban services boundary is the first step in doing that. So that's been very concerning to me in my district as we get out more toward the rural areas. When we expand the urban services boundary, we have more development knocking on the doors, and I still feel like that is absolutely what people do not want to see more of. I think we've got to, it's like with the parks, we've got to get a hold of what we got first. The adequate public facilities, y'all know I'm all in favor of that. I think that schools and other infrastructure needs to share in being offset by developer funding. I think that's very important. The collector road plan is, I still have an issue with connectivity. I think connectivity is a big word, and in some cases it works, and in some cases it doesn't. And I would like to see the county have some flexibility in connectivity, not just say, hey, we have to do this, we have to connect this right here, because sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And as we add more things that maybe are parks or preservation or conservation, connectivity will make less and less sense as we add some properties like that. So connectivity to me is a short-sighted policy that the county has. I mean, that's really it. I think we have some issues with customer service in the, we had a great conversation with the developer, Josh, and they brought out some customer service things, and I heard from a developer yesterday that said, had we been told what we could do by the county a year and a half ago, neighbors wouldn't still be losing sleep over what we're ultimately going to do. Sure. And so there's a lot of that, and I think this is a longer conversation than we have time to really get into. I don't know. I worry about the let's see what there's something I wanted to say over here and I can't remember. I don't know. I think some flexibility is. Some flexibility is something that we've asked for a long time, and we seem to be, what Christy said, we seem to be a little rigid sometimes.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to build into here,
Yeah.
opportunities for flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Under strategies number 2, what strategic partners should be asked to join a group to create a comprehensive housing assessment to analyze housing affordability and factors impacting affordable and accessible housing? I'm going to go back because I'm going to answer some of your questions that you just brought up, if you don't mind.
Yes,
Allison.
and so I like your question too, Watts. I think what across the plan, we've mentioned stakeholders multiple times, and in each different goal, those could be different stakeholders. And in this one, right, what we're thinking is these are our regional counties. This is the COG, this is the chamber. You know, that's likely what these stakeholders will be here, but it's great to ask that question for each of these because it's different depending on the goal.
And I want to add some context to this real quickly. Why? Because I came prepared, and I know it's 8:15, but I spent a lot of time reading through this and thinking through solutions. So I'm going to take my time and share them if y'all don't mind. So, affordable, attainable. I've been talking about this since I joined council. It's on my top 10 list that I shared in January. And I still feel like it is a serious issue. And I'm going to explain to you why I think it's a serious issue. And I'm going to take Rock Hill as an example. Rock Hill is 42 square miles. 30,000, there are approximately 33,000 households in Rock Hill. When you think about what percentage of your gross income should go towards your housing needs, that is your mortgage payment, your taxes, your insurance, your utility bill, and upkeep, you really should not be spending more than 30% of your gross income towards your house. Okay? In York County, over 50% of our citizens in Rock Hill spend 50% of their income on their house. So when you talk about affordability, what are you really talking about? And I'm going to try to get to the point quickly on a couple of points here that are important. Number one, if you look at somebody that earns $55,000 or less, teachers, first responders, we all talk about first responders and what we want to do for first responders. What can a $55,000 income living on their own, where can they live? Nowhere in York County. Nowhere in York County. Unless there's a vacant house they're going to live in. It doesn't exist. Not in York County. Not in the incorporated areas of York County. Now, unincorporated, they might live in a single wide or double wide or a camper or something like that. So $55,000 of income means that you should be paying no more than $1,250 a month if you could borrow the money at 7% for a $200,000 home. Where can you find a $200,000 home in York County? Virtually nowhere. So in Rock Hill alone, if you applied the math to what I just said, Rock Hill alone, based on what I think is true, is about 6,500 rooftops short of having enough affordable housing to meet the needs of Rockhillians. Now, I think it's funny when we hear about raising minimum wage because I don't know of anybody that earns minimum wage today. I mean, when you look at the wage and benefits report that came out by Economic Development, I think the average wage in York County is like $18. I don't remember. I could pull it up, but I don't have time to do that. Point is, wages have gone up considerably. But as wages go up considerably, why are wages having to go up considerably? Cost of living and inflation? What's a big part of that? Where people live, or where they can't live. Or what it costs them to drive 30 miles, 40 miles or further from where they live to get to where they work. So I believe we have a responsibility to do something about this. And guess what? The county's no different. The county has 696 square miles in it, 25,000 households, and we got the same issue there too, where people are spending too much money on their housing. So I think we have a significant responsibility to our citizens to address this issue. And addressing the issue doesn't mean that you've got to budget money to address the issue. I believe it's changing ordinances. It's opening your mind up to, my first house was 880 square feet over McCarthy Street. 2 bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, den. I could move back there today and live there if I had to, no issue. Probably should. But this is something that's serious, and I want you to think about this. Regardless of whether you want York County to continue to grow or not, if we get ahead of this, like other counties have talked about it, there are other counties in South Carolina talking about this, but if we get ahead of this, not by going to the state asking for property tax concessions or us investing money that we'll never get back, we're in a unique opportunity to attract more industry here because we have come up with a solution to a very serious problem that our citizens are grappling with. As the south side of Rock Hill gets developed, where are the citizens of the south side of Rock Hill going? As roads are improved and sidewalks are put in, and this house is renovated, and that one's renovated, and this one sells for $250, $300, $350, where do people go? There's nowhere for them to go here in York County because we don't have any affordable housing. This is a serious issue that we need to tackle. I'll go back to my notes. Talking about codes. What land use codes need to evolve to meet the growth and the change we have unintentionally and intentionally created? Number 2, what's the benefit of eliminating anonymous reporting? Number 3, what's the benefit of a business license in unincorporated York County? And the reason I put that on there is because, I'll go back to what I said a minute ago, and you all may disagree with me. But when we get water and sewer out into the county, if we do this, then growth and expansion is going to happen naturally. Highway 5 is already in place, so this was forward thinking, and all Highway 5 is waiting for is water and sewer, and then that's going to grow. But I think that's why a strategic, intentional plan for development is critically important, so we can control what that looks like. There are lots of models today about how areas have been recreated or redeveloped and how some are being developed off raw land. There are plenty of great examples out there, and I think we have a chance to be intentional. And I think the business license is the next step in getting our arms around what the future of unincorporated York County looks like. I like to say, you can say I'm crazy as hell, but I like to say the unincorporated area of York County is just like another big municipality one day. 10, 15 years from now, I think that's the case. Once you stop annexation, then we have a static footprint that we begin to build upon. Because there won't be any more land left in the municipal areas, there's hardly any now. And under D1D under strategies, what are emerging trends? What are the emerging trends? I think
And that's what we would share with y'all in a given year. We would bring forward that as staff.
And then I already said this one. What ordinances, trends, successes exist in high-growth counties that attacks affordable, attainable workforce housing? It comes up with a logical solution. Then I said, you already mentioned this, but I'll say it again. What's the benefit of adequate public facility programs that include facilities such as water, sewer, parks, schools, and so forth and so on? What's the benefit of actually putting a sound, adequate public facilities program together that helps fund the future of unincorporated York County? That's all.
Fine.
Well, I guess I can't say I think there's a lot in the codes that need to be changed. If someone buys their land, especially out in the country, whether it's they build a smaller house, I don't even have a problem with people living in campers if they own their own land. I just don't. But I don't think it's our position to give, you know, hands up but not hands out. But I'm just sick of the growth altogether. But I don't know how you're going to stop it. And I find it kind of amazing that a lot of these people that are moving in here talk about how wonderful York County and da-da-da. But when they move here, they're starting to make it create exactly what they left. And to me, that a lot of them left big cities to move here, and now we're creating big cities. I mean, where does it stop? Is there an answer to any of this? My theory is we ought to be pushing the state to give us some way to control what the municipalities are doing. And especially if there is gonna be building here, it shouldn't go to out-of-state builders, it should go to our people that were born and raised here. I do think it's a shame having a daughter that is a police officer and one that's a teacher, and one of them's already had to move out of York County because they can't afford to live here. And then I get told, me owning land, that we have an ordinance in there because I got 7 kids. Oh, no, you can't do that because then that'd be more than 6 splits. You'll have to do a small subdivision on a family farm. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. But I think we could go a long way. But how do you get a grasp on this when the markets are what have determined and set a $70 to $125 house, $1,000 house, just a few years back now is $350,000. There's just certain things that are out of your control. Like my one daughter that's a teacher, and her husband, you know, they struggle. We went out here and we got the state giving all this ISO junk and they building these multi-million-dollar schools and all this here that makes York County look so attractive. And then I had to go buy printing paper for my daughter. Because a lot of times teachers, they can't get all the materials that they need, and they're in multi-million-dollar schools. So, I mean, all this plays, I guess you could say, in hand. But nobody in this room will not tell me that York County was a lot better place to live in a county from the 1980s back than it is. I do not see anything good in growth. We used to have jobs for people. All we got now is houses and fast food restaurants. And I don't think it's just us. I think this issue that we talk about right here is everywhere in the South. And from the folks I talk to in Charleston, ain't nobody got an answer to this. Nobody does. But I agree with Watts. There's a lot that we could do in ordinances that would help our people out.
Yep, I think that's what we're trying to explore here.
Yeah.
You know, some of these.
But other than that, I mean, I can't tell you what, if you can't stop them, what you gonna do?
Okay, I'm fast and furious. Okay, so I think that this section is extremely important that we get this right. Because if we don't grow responsibly, we're sunk. And we're not doing that right now.
Okay.
Okay, so, the situation with, documentation and the, fact that, this is intriguing to me, is 1C, that they would, whoever would submit an annual report to council that proactively measures the impact of recently adopted text amendments and summarizes code interpretation that require clarifying text amendments. That's a lot there.
Right.
But-
We're trying to give you all more information so you know how.
Yeah, but
why
I
behind some
think,
of
I think that would be
these-
interesting. I would
Mhm.
love to see something.
Okay, great.
Okay, affordable and attainable housing is a nationwide problem. I don't think it's just the state of South Carolina. We are forever in our area, a bedroom community of Charlotte. You will never change that. That is our lot in life. We are the bedroom community of Charlotte. And if you don't believe it, sit at 77 and Highway 21 at 5 o'clock and you'll believe it. You'll be a believer, okay? So then, that's an issue. I don't know how you work on that one. Okay, so then, I do believe in adequate public facilities program, because if the developers want to come in here, I think that they have a responsibility for the community that they put their money in. That's it.
Well, I'm gonna go back to the very first comment that was made in this section, that it sounds good coming out of a politician's mouth that we're gonna do all we can for affordable/attainable housing. One of the notes I made is that we can't lessen the building requirements. We can't do anything about the requirements.
Section 2? Or what
Yeah,
section?
around.
Okay.
We can't do anything about the building codes, because I think we're under the IBC that sets all the standards. We can't do anything about what somebody pays for the land when they're building houses. We can't do anything about the market value. If we can figure out this sitting in this room, we can take this plan across the country and solve every 50 states.
Can we charge for that?
And we'll be able to charge whatever we want to charge for it. I think we're, like Alice said, it sounds good, but what does that look like? It would be easier for municipalities that jump on this, because they get all the CDBG money, they can buy land, they can offer reduce whatever rates for the whole project. That's not what we're not set up for that. We don't get CDBG money. We're not going in buying property, offering it to developers, saying, hey, build these homes within this price range. That would be an ideal thing to do. If we own 50 acres of land, say, hey, Josh, we'll give you this land at a reduced rate. If you can build houses, workforce housing in this price range. That's not what York County does. We don't have funds set up to go out and purchase land to offer to developers. And then if we did, Kevin might say, well, I want part of that action too. Why are you offering it to Josh? How do we start picking, even if we did have the money to go do that? This is a problem or issue across the country that, honestly, we'd probably be giving more lip service than we're giving to solving these issues. Our police departments are offering incentives to police officers to help them with a cash supplement, to help them purchase homes. It's not reducing the rate, but it's giving them money to help them purchase homes in certain neighborhoods. But that's money that they're throwing at the problem. Until we have the money, then we can come up with a plan. But I think it's more, this part, it's more lip service, I think, because we can't even change the building code.
Yeah, so this is really about partnership. We're not talking about getting into the affordable housing business, but this is about, 2C as an example, create structure and incentive programs. Parking density is an example. If you have density, maybe we don't have as stringent parking requirements, right? If you have more density, it means you have more units. More units means it could be potentially more affordable. So, there's things in our ordinances that we could do to encourage this, but not pay for it. I think we're trying to just give you all options the next 3 years to consider these things, whether you want to do it or not.
When I see incentives, incentives to me means something financial.
No, that's not, that really is more how do we incentivize through our ordinances for developers to consider this. So the other thing I would say is, look, it doesn't have to be, we don't have to talk about affordable. We can talk about workforce and attainable if y'all want. I think part of this is the language. some of you, I'm hearing y'all don't agree with. So I think that's the kind of feedback we need. If you want us to strike all of 2, we need that consensus. But I think what I'm hearing is y'all want to better understand the situation, right? Is there an opportunity just to better understand our housing inventory so y'all have that information?
Well, just like we said on the very first page, these headings are great. How do we get there?
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be the challenging part in the consensus
Completely
from all
agree.
of us.
I
I mean,
completely agree.
if we can hit every mark on here, you know, it's gonna be a challenge to get this council
Super council.
to agree with how are we getting there.
Mhm.
I have no issue with anything that we say we're gonna set out to do over the next 3 years. The issue's gonna come in is to how we ultimately go 1, 2, 3, 4, now we've solved this problem.
Right.
And, you know, some of the conversations we've had tonight have just kind of just been, you know, getting some stuff off our chest because I didn't think we were here to get solutions. We're just like, hey, this is what we're gonna be looking at over the next
Right.
3 years.
Do you want it or do you not?
Do we want it, do we not? Not so much of what we're gonna do, how we're gonna do it, but I have no issue with every heading in every section. It's
Okay.
just, when the road meets the road, when we get to these points, how do we do it?
That's right.
How do we do it?
Yep.
So-
And we probably could have got through this a lot faster if that was kind of the goal of everybody, just kind of say, hey, here's the overview. We're not gonna solve anything tonight, but I hear everybody wants to throw out a little nugget as to,
But this is all part of the process. I want this to be y'all's plan, right? So I want y'all to, you know, kind of work through this. So I know this is a little painful, but I think this is worthy time.
I think it's worthwhile. Honestly, I'll be shocked, and I've been shocked before, but the last 2 pieces of, like, the last 2 categories that we need to deal with, I think we're gonna find a lot of consensus. I think this is probably the last category that has a lot of concern from council. And so,
Mhm.
you know, I'll wrap things up and then we'll have some comments from other council to speak into this. I think one of the, when I hear grow responsibly, what I hear is get the bureaucracy out of the way of people's property rights. And so one of the things that has really disturbed me is that when council passed RECODE, we were very vigilant. We were very, I can say RECODE right now because we haven't gotten to a code.
There you go.
So when we passed it, our understanding, and I'll tell you, my understanding was we didn't change property rights. We were updating it, allowing additional uses, providing that. I know that from like folks that own AGC property, people that had left property wanted to leave property to their kids, they thought that they were allowed 2 primary residences on 5 acres. We've already covered that ground. That is not what happened. And so anybody that wanted to allow their kid to build on their property now, that's been taken away. I think that needs to be reinstated because we didn't fix that. And I do think that is important. That's critically important to people who have held on to their property to try and make sure that people could build their houses there. When it comes to, you know, looking at what strikes me about this Grow Responsibly piece is that it does seem to be very heavily weighted towards the affordable housing. I think the affordable housing piece is a conundrum because I think it's one of those things that is typically found within your urban services boundary, within your municipalities. How do we support our municipalities? Because typically
Yeah.
those affordable housing places need access to water and sewer, they need access to public transportation, they need access to a lot of different things. I think the idea that we're now gonna come out here and like allow properties to start doing these tiny homes everywhere throughout the county, that's a mistake, we can't do that. So I think it's rife with like concerns. How do we tackle this in a way that makes the most sense? At the same time, I think if you're gonna adopt one of the things, we went to these Association of Counties meetings, and one of the things that I learned, which was surprising to me, is some of these multi-county industrial parks, well, I think you may appreciate this, these multi-county industrial parks, they're building into the multi-county industrial parks a housing component to make sure that folks that, if we're gonna attract a new business that needs to come here, is there a place where they can work there, like live there, make it nicer to where those folks live? that was interesting to me because they did give them those incentives there, but I think that goes back to the economic development piece. I'm not opposed to thinking about any alternatives.
Housing on that property.
Do what now?
You said something about Daimler.
That was the initial plan for the Daimler property.
I think that if you have a plan that you can actually stick with, that could be helpful. And then, so I guess I kind of see where you're going with this when it says attract these communities that allow for you to work within them. To me, the most important thing when it comes to grow responsibly is, and I know that council had some concern that the number we were given from David Swenson was not accurate, but how do we tap into the fact that 70% of our workforce works outside of York County? How do we grab hold of that? How do we take hold of that? That goes back to the economic development piece. I think on these pieces, the part, you know, you had your feedback from Tom Audette, who was a little bit concerned about this. I think what folks hear when they hear affordable housing is Section 8 housing. That's totally different than what we're talking about here. We're talking about and honestly, I think there's a statutory issue where apparently the state approved this ordinance that allows any new development that incorporates affordable housing into their component, they don't have to pay taxes. That's what the city's fighting. The state's fighting that. The legislators fighting that. They're like, that is a masterful problem because they didn't require them to identify what is affordable housing. So I don't know. I mean, I think the part of this one that just causes a little bit of consternation is the affordable housing piece. What is the county's role in that? Is it simply to provide a pass-through to some of the municipalities? Should we have a housing study that just says, what do we need right now? Not do we need to borrow from everybody else, but we clearly want to make sure we have workforce housing. We want to make sure our police, our teachers, and our fire can live where they work. I think that's different than what I think comes to mind when people hear affordable housing in Section 8. So I'm hearing council like saying the same thing here. Is this kind of overtook that whole concept, and I do think the whole point of this is how do we make sure that we grow in a way that we aren't outdoing our water and sewer and our infrastructure. So I think if y'all hear us on that one, we're probably good.
We
These
do.
last two, I think we're gonna move through these quickly unless y'all prove me wrong. So.
All right, here we go.
Okay, so the next one is a safe community, and just at high level at the retreat, we heard council's feedback that we want to look at responsive. We want to be a safe community. We want to hire and retain public safety staff and also have an alignment amongst the public safety entities. So the strategies before you are, we're going to improve response times to ensure reliable and effective emergency services, increase emergency services engagement in the community, educate, as a piece of this, educate our residents on what they can do when it floods, or if there's an emergency, or when do you call 911? Did you know you can text 911? So it's a big education piece in the community. Develop and retain professional staff and standards so as to deliver quality services. We also brought in HR, and you'll see that as an initiative to that they assisted with in hiring and retaining public safety staff. And then last, align our public safety entities so that we improve the coordination of emergency services efforts. And with that, I'll open it up.
All right, let's start out with this. I am like a politician in this perspective. We're going to go backwards and we'll cover something that was said, then I'm going to get to what you asked me to answer. Number one, council member told me once that I was not a politician, and that individual was correct. I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant. So I appreciate it not referring to me as a politician, because that is offensive to me. Number two, I'm not necessarily interested in what's going on nationally, or what hasn't happened nationally, or what hasn't happened in other counties of South Carolina. I'm interested in what can happen here in York County. And I believe things can happen here in York County that haven't happened in other areas. And the question is, how do we do it? It was mentioned that you gotta have the money first, and I don't agree with that. You don't have the money first. If you had the money first, we would never give back 4.4 mils to the citizens. We would have kept it, hung on to it, so we can fund all these initiatives we're talking about now that I said probably would be coming out of this strategic planning session that we're having right now. So if that were the case, we'd have the money for a lot of these things, we would be saying where we're gonna get the money. So you have to have a plan, you have to complete the due diligence to understand what the need is, and then you back into how you're gonna pay for it, if you pay for it at all, my opinion. And then the last thing I want to say before I get to my one comment on this particular section is that, think about how I want to say this without being offensive. We are fortunate, and some of you may know this, so I'm not talking down, I'm not being a know-it-all, I'm just giving you my perspective on what I've witnessed over the last 5 months and what I've asked different people I run into them that work with the county. Often when you have new leadership, you get the same thing you had before. Sometimes you get new leadership and they actually follow through and do what they say they're going to do, and they keep their foot on the pedal and keep pressing until change actually happens and positive change is a result. And I'm of the opinion that under new leadership, slowly but surely, the staff of this county is feeling that they're going to have the opportunity to participate and create what we're talking about here. They've already participated in the strategic plan. So when I hear that council can't do this, you're right. This is not the role of council. The role of council is to set policy. Council's not supposed to be in the weeds. When we get through this exercise, this isn't work for us to do. This is work for staff, for us to go to Josh and say, Josh, assimilate your team. If you don't have your team, get your team in place. If that means hiring new people, promoting, demoting, replacing, coaching, whatever you need to do to get your staff in place to carry this out, then that's what you need to do. And unfortunately for Josh in this new role, it's only human nature for people in this process to push back on change, because that's what we do as people. We push back on change, and he has to keep pushing forward because he's confident enough to know that there are things we can benefit from implementing a lot of the stuff that's in the strategic plan. So I want to compliment Josh on what he's done in the last 5 months, because his staff is beginning to believe that what he's saying and what he's doing can actually happen. And I see the change myself, and I want to thank you for that. That's real. So my only comment I will make on this section is, what are the State of the Union priorities for our future Sheriff Tony Green? I think it's going to be important to hear from him what he thinks could be done differently to have a safer community and address some of the needs that we have. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to share, and I know he's going to do a great job of sharing.
Yeah, we agree with that. There is going to be the opportunity. The Sheriff's Department does have their own strategic plan, and the new sheriff will likely be updating that and putting his vision in. I think part of this, we did include the Sheriff's Department in the discussions. So Ms. Moore was there, so was Heather, who's on, so they were involved in this, which I think was important. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Tommy?
Well, I was going to say that the new sheriff needs to be involved, but another thing, and I've already elaborated it, me and you talked about, basically bringing Johnny and Roy into our fire departments with emergency response in the fire departments.
Right, so,
And I think that would help a lot in our rural areas.
in terms of emergency
Yeah.
EMS and kind of having that conversation about the role of the fire departments and EMS. Right. So I consider that to be in 4B. There's there's few words there, but there's a lot of work in that initiative. And we're gonna have many more conversations about that. Yep.
I'm done.
Okay, all right, great.
Well, one thing, just a broad statement here, is on our roads when there's an accident, people don't know who to call.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's just I think that's a simple fix. It's just information
Right.
and education.
Yeah, and when we get all the public safety departments together to develop these initiatives, and you're referencing probably 2A and 2B, that was something that they all brought up. We get these questions, depending on what number you call, you might get something different. Some people call the non-emergency numbers. They might not realize they're not in the town of Clover, they're just outside. They should call 911, and our 911 group would
It's
help
very
facilitate
confusing.
that. Right, but you can get lost out there.
And hopefully,
Yeah.
people are getting help
Yep, that's what we're at.
and not falling through the cracks, and that's
Great.
it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll start by saying directly to Watts, nobody called you a politician. Nobody's pushing back on leadership. And we do have to make sure we have some funds to do what we think we're gonna set out to do. I don't know how it was mistaken that any of this was present that was directed at anybody in this meeting tonight, but just wanted to clear that up. So, I have nothing.
And this will feed into the next budget process, this plan, so this is all gonna tie together someday, so, yep.
If that was an apology accepted.
I don't really have anything in this category. I think it's all very important, and it's not the fun stuff. It's the meat and potatoes of what we do. And,
That's right.
And so I think I agree with pretty much everything that's here.
Perfect, thank you. All right.
I'm the last one, you didn't.
Oh, I know. Sorry.
He got to put the boys in bed.
It's too late for
I have
that.
nothing to add. I think everything y'all put in there is 100% on board, and I think the comments that our council has said, I think we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Good, sorry I skipped you. Sorry about that, Madam Chair. All right, I was just getting excited because we're at the last one. All right, so quality infrastructure. What we heard from y'all was you want us to take a look at what we have. So this idea of assessing our different types of infrastructure. When we build infrastructure, you want us to make sure it's the right infrastructure and it's quality and it will last. You want us to be focused on maintaining what we have. So what can we do to better preserve the infrastructure, make it last longer? And then how do we want to think about future infrastructure needs? All right, so those are the four main categories we heard from you. So when you look at the goal, a lot of it's almost word for word, right? The first strategy is let's assess our different types of infrastructure. We focus in on certain types of infrastructure based on your feedback. So that was roads, so pavement indexes. We focused on water and sewer infrastructure, stormwater, and we also looked at facilities. Okay, so those are how we kind of thought about infrastructure from the county's perspective. When we talk about quality infrastructure, how we build it, one of the things we highlighted in the initiatives is trying to come up with other ways to fund the infrastructure, right? So we're going to add a grants position. What can we do to find other funding opportunities? When we talked about preserving, one of the initiatives you'll find in there that we heard from y'all is what can we do with our own staff? What is our ability to utilize our own staff to potentially pave more county roads, right? So one of our initiatives is specific. How can we get to the point where we can pave 15 miles a year? That would be a combination of a contractor and staff. We're about 3 to 4 miles a year right now. So how can we get to 15? We want to challenge ourselves. And then in terms of future infrastructure, we've heard a lot from y'all about water and sewer, right? So how can we evaluate our long-term potential solutions for water and sewer supply and treatment? So those are some of the highlights, but I think y'all see the four categories that we heard from y'all here. But we'll open it up and think about who's starting.
You know what? I never get to start. I
Yes.
always have to wait till the end.
There you go.
But everybody started once, so I'm gonna start this one. When I looked at this one, when I see identification of quality infrastructure is obviously the roads and infrastructure, which folks in the community don't understand that most of the roads are state roads. They don't get it. They do not understand that. That is an education anytime someone calls. Who has the jurisdiction over that? But to me, the two areas that y'all have focused on are water and sewer infrastructure and road infrastructure. And I fully support items number one. The one thing that I think we've left out, and one thing I would really love to see us do, and I think this would help us when we go forward with asking our delegation for things and that sort of thing, is York County was the pioneer county that did Pennies for Progress. We went out there and said, if you're not going to do it, we're going to do it, and here's what we're going to look at. And so I'm very proud of that history. The one thing I don't think we've done, and I would love to see us align what are the roads that we're doing under Pennies for Progress? What are the roads that we're doing under CTC? What are the municipal roads? We have RFATS projects, we have SCDOT. I would like to see us like put this into one area. Let's get like a 5 to 10 year plan of what are the roads that we're doing for the next 5 to 10 years. Because sometimes I don't know if other council members have experienced this, but there have been roads that have popped up on my CFUN list that were supposed to be carried on by the state. And so because the county is a donor county, we give a bunch of money of our state tax money to the state. I think we ought to come up with an alignment of all of those projects. Let's look at what's being done and let's start tracking them so that we know where the next, and start tracking what our roads are. I think we should add that to the group of things that we do. And the only other thing that I'll say is that obviously stormwater is something that's crystallized in our mind. I mean, Debbie's had an issue that's come up in her district. We're having issues in various districts. When you have stores like Debbie come through, I'm sure it wasn't named for you, Debbie.
It was.
It's spelled differently, right?
That name that after her.
Whenever, I'm telling you, when these things come up, I start riding through, I was like, who's looking at where are these problems? Because the majority of these problems are DOT problems.
Sure.
And what we end up doing is we take that responsibility on ourselves. And, you know, if we have to do that to protect our citizens, that's so be it. But at the same time, I worry that when we start saying, let's focus on a stormwater utility district, that what we end up doing is we start causing problems. What ends up happening is when we did a little bit of a change and we had all of these changes to the blue lines throughout the county, the people that called me the most was somebody who owned 50 acres and they were building a house on 20 acres and they were getting pounded over like how, you know, they were having a silt fence for their house, but the tract builders weren't getting pounded on what they're doing. That's the only concern that I have with this. Is obviously we do need to look at this stormwater issue. I think we need to put responsibility where responsibility is owed and identify those problems and target the areas that we need to ask the delegation to say, look, the ditches aren't being maintained on these state roads. This is not our job.
Right.
This is a state job. If we start taking that over, why are we even, why are we even paying taxes here? Because we're paying it, we're doing it 3 times here. We need to come up with a cohesive ask of our delegation. I think they'll be very receptive to that. I think the folks at the State House would understand it. If we could cohesively come up with a message that says, not only are we doing pennies, but we're doing stormwater and this and that. But my concern is that when I see this stormwater here, it scares me to death. Because what I see is unfortunately that we're gonna now
Take over
we
state stuff.
we end up taking over state stuff and we end up getting people who are like building a house on 20 acres. It seems like they get the hardest time and not the developers who are building, like that's the problem I have. Is because those are the calls I get. I don't get the calls from people saying that this developer who's doing 25 homes is screwed up. I get it from my friend who owns 50 acres, said, what the heck, I can't even get my house built because they're telling me I've got to have a silt fence around 20, it doesn't even impact anything. That's the concern I really think y'all need to pay attention to. That is where the rubber meets the road when it comes to trying to implement those things. That's my concern from implementing those things. That's where you will find me stepping in saying no, because I don't trust that we're going to do it in a way that's respectful to the people that own their property. So that's all I got.
Thank you.
I like it.
Watts, you next.
All right. So number one, I'm going to piggyback on what you were just saying, Christie, and that is that, I will say it a little differently. Supply and demand impacts the cost of the project. Example. The I-77 project we have in front of us now, which is exit, the first one is exit, I get the exit.
82 is left and 80.
Which one are we doing first?
85 is done.
Being done.
Being done, just started.
85 is funded. We're done.
The next project is
82.
82. So 82 was projected to be $90 million, and now it's north of 150, I think. Is that right?
So,
Started at 60.
yeah, it started at 60, it's 75, the delta is 75 million, so we're needing to find 75 million.
Right. Here's my point. How many bidders do we have on that project? One. Because supply and demand.
Well, we haven't
And
did
so-
that one out yet.
Well, we don't. I'm talking about the one, which one?
85 is the
85.
one, yeah.
85 was at 90, it was budgeted to the state at 90 million, and then the bid came in at 150. Only one bid. My point of that is, yes, it's gotten more expensive to pave roads, but what options are we looking towards to lessen our cost? So, I'll get to my what ifs. What's the benefit in investing in public works so they can address roads of shorter lengths and less population on the road? You just mentioned, and all of us see this in our C-Fund money. I guarantee you, none of us chose a road or a small section on your list that the resident submitted where it was a, I don't know, fourth of a mile, but there's only one or two houses on the road. That road's not getting paved. Because it's not, if you're going by your priority points, the lower, the higher the need to pave, it's not gonna fall in there. So that road gets worse and worse and worse, right? It's awful. But they don't get paved because you need to do the priority roads first that have the lowest scores. So I believe we need to take a strong look at what our staff can be doing on these shorter, smaller roads. And I know there's challenges, you gotta get staff, you got to train, you gotta get equipment, whatever. We're blowing the money when we're paying contractors to do this work, and we could do it cheaper. So yes, there's an investment in getting a better return, and I suggest we look into it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and that's really in 3B, that's a portion of being successful
where I
in
am,
3B.
And
Yeah.
back to Chris's comments, that to keep in mind, our staff can only work on county roads, we can't work on state roads, and that limits.
I'm with you. So then the follow-up is, what are the
If I
benefits?
can just interject here, this is the reason why I think it's important, I would say this, alignment of studies. It's like going to SCDOT and finding out what are your like, I would love to know, what are the roads that you think you need to do on your own without us having to do pennies, without us having to do it so that we can hold them accountable to those things? That's what's not being done. That, we don't have an alignment of here are the projects that we can hold, like, let's get that priority
Yeah.
list from you. Let's put it on one global map, and let's make sure that when we go to the State House, look, the only thing that we're doing is when we approve, like, we want our community to be supportive of all the things that we are doing.
Maybe you could
And I
ask the
think-
local delegation to help us get it.
I think that's the alignment of the
Yep.
programs is where they will see, like in a visual, how we do what, and I think Watts is dead on when it comes to these projects that we're doing with RFAS. That is where our investment shows the SIB Bank, this is what we're doing, and y'all need to see this too, and I didn't want to interrupt, but I
Okay.
wanted to see that.
And this is where I lack knowledge. As some people say, the younger folks on council lack the knowledge. Well, this is an example where I lack knowledge, but I'm gonna say this. And so I don't know what we control with this, or whether our delegation could have any impact on this at the state level. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna go back to supply and demand. If there's not but one contractor to bid on the job, there's a good chance you're gonna spend more money than you should. So, what are the benefits of us phasing projects so that a local contractor who can bond a job up to 5 million, 10 million, 20 million can do one phase of the project, and we come back and do phase two with another contractor, maybe the same, because you got more people bidding on it, right? Break the project down into phases so we can have more competition in the bidding to get the work done. Versus just taking a single bid on an entire job, and you don't have about one person quoting on it, and we can't afford it. We're throwing taxpayers' money on it. So what are the benefits of a phased approach, and how do we accomplish this? And I don't know the answer to this yet, but I'm interested in hearing some solutions on that. That's all.
Me?
Yep.
All right, I might be off base here, but I would say this is a perfect example of not taking care of what you already got before you do more. And in saying that, and I don't even know if you could do it, but a lot of these developers that ain't even from here, if we had a way, oh yeah, sure, you can do this, but you're paying for all the infrastructure that it's gonna take to do it. We ain't gonna be, I don't know if that would work. I think everybody in the stormwater department, you ought to get a, first day on the job, get a piece of pipe and hold it at an angle and pour water in the end of it so they see that water goes downhill. Because I can name you a bunch of roads, and I'm sure that y'all can too, where when they went away from building roads with crowns and ditches on them and started putting the curb and gutter with storm water, they created an issue of you can't drive. Everybody's huddling to get in the middle lane. So, in this whole thing we talking about here is a lot of people thinking they're a lot smarter than what they actually are.
I mean, we're trying to prioritize what we have, and that's what number 3
Right,
is.
but I'm just saying, how are you ever going to catch up whenever you're already so far behind on what you already?
I hear that.
One bite at a time, Tom.
Yeah, we're trying. We're gonna do the best we can.
Somebody better start chewing away bodies.
If we don't start now, we're gonna get more behind, and that's the more.
Well, that's what I got on.
Yeah, that's good, that's fair, that's good.
Debbie.
Okay. Are you done? Just checking.
Perfect common sense.
Well, I agree with everything you said, and more. I think the state needs to pay for what the state needs to pay for, and stop holding their hands out to us. They got plenty of money. They found how much?
Too much.
Christie, you said it,
Too
what,
much.
what'd they find,
1.8.
84 million or 90-some million in a bank account that they didn't even know they had? Now, they can afford to give us some money on these
Already spent
interchanges, and it ticks me off, big time. Okay, that's number one. Number two is, if we don't do something, we're always, and this is in the Bible, you're gonna be beholden to, the lender is, you're always gonna be
The
beholden.
bar servant to the window.
Yeah, there you go, that's the one. So on this water and sewer business, we're never gonna be happy with that. Because you're always gonna be holding to Rock Hill or Charlotte. Pick your poison. Until we suck it up and do something. Stand on our own 2 feet. Yeah, I said that right there.
I made a couple
I mean,
notes.
it's the truth. Okay.
My notes I made was paving is so expensive. It's gotten expensive every year, year after year. We talk about insurance going up, we talk about inflation going up, we talk about cost of living going up, but paving has gone up more than any of them over the last, I'm gonna say, my 13 years.
And he's making my other point, I
Yeah.
didn't get the next one.
I knew you was gonna get it. And I think Watts is spot on, trying to get something started in-house where we can start doing something on a smaller scale. If we're gonna make an investment in something, paving is probably one of the most critical things we can probably start looking to get into.
And I'll remind you, y'all bought through the budget, y'all have funded the machines to go do that. We have our own road crew, we do about half the price. And when we look at the budget, the amount of money we have, we feed them as much as they can eat. And everybody's in line with Watts. We want to build and expand upon that, because again, it's half the cost, we do it ourselves, but only county roads, that's the
Yeah.
biggest hurdle, honestly.
Well,
Make sure you do it right.
Another thing I put down was,
Get soon.
speaking of the state, we can send the state a list of roads in our area that they need to put some attention to. I don't think that's kind of out
I
of the
think we should
league.
I think we should know what their list is, because I think sometimes we're borrowing, we're doing it ahead of time. But we should have a list that's together. That's why I think the alignment is so critically important. Hold them accountable to what are the roads you're gonna do already.
Yeah.
You're not paid to just county roads out of your C fund money, y'all know that.
Yeah, we
No,
have
I'm
we
talking
have
about
to do so
DOT,
many,
I'm talking about DOT's responsibility.
we have to do so many
DOT's
state roads. We have to- As a collective county, we have to do at least 25% of that C fund money. Another thing is even grass cutting on state roads, litter pickup on state roads. They're failing us in so many different ways at the state level.
Yeah.
I mean,
We're having to do some of that.
well, we're right on camera, but at the same time, you know, if we're gonna be held accountable, we need to hold those who have some accountability here to be accountable.
That's the strength of our local delegation, and the messages to deliver on these. These are good topics for local delegation to help us with.
So,
Because the
you
county
know,
has really stepped up to do a lot,
Yeah.
a lot.
So that's
We're
kind of my thing. That's where we could be, at least like Chris said, get the list from them, or we send them the list, and hey, we need these roads done. But it's probably work better if we're asking them, hey, what are you guys planning on doing in the area the next couple of years? What are your plans? Then we can kind of piggyback and go off what they said they're gonna do. But we do need to kind of open that communication up with DOT, even if we have to go through our local delegation to kind of breach those conversations. But, because we can't do it all by ourselves. We can't do
I'd like to
it.
know how much roads are they willing to do and what are they? So that we don't duplicate. it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's-
Or we don't jump ahead and do a road that we
Exactly.
plan on doing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's right,
Yeah.
well, Penny's is out there already, so
Can-
maybe next time around.
Can I also say something else that we need to look into? I'm sorry.
No, we're done. You're done.
I had a
He's not listening.
issue that, well, I mean, this is
You
important.
gotta make sure everybody talks first, though.
When, and this issue,
Tommy, let Allison talk and then we'll circle back.
Yeah, she didn't talk.
okay,
Allison is
I asked her if it'd be out if I just talked.
Allison's going.
I'm gonna be
Then we'll
short,
move on.
I'm gonna be short. So one thing I think animal control is left off of the list of infrastructure. I think it's very important, and I think it's an increasing burden. I know we're looking at a new facility, and I know we're looking at some new employees and things, but we're behind. We're behind on all of that, and it's impacting a lot in general. The stormwater utility district, we've looked at that in the past. That is very concerning to me, because here we are, we want to talk about helping small businesses, and we want to talk about affordable, making houses, not, I'm going to say more affordable for people. The stormwater utility district is something that's very costly to businesses and homeowners. So
Right.
I think that is, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to say something, and I may be wrong, but I always feel like one thing that we do, we've got a positive thing here, and then we offset it with negatives. So when we were talking a few minutes ago, and I think the stormwater utility district plays into this, but when we were talking about, hold on, how do I write this down? Growing, no, we're talking about affordable housing, not in the Section 8 sense of the word, but just affordable. So there are several things that we defeat ourselves on that. So we want to be able to offer things to those people who are, maybe they're making $50,000, $75,000 a year, and it's hard. Like, the statistics that Watts gave, those are I'm sure very, very accurate. But where we defeat ourselves are with things like, we have to be careful with impact fees. We have to be careful with, a home that is under a certain value, and I don't know what that is now, but they don't pay for themselves. So we end up, as a county, county residents pay for that gap. And we've got, just, those are the home values. And then we also have to look at, we're bringing companies into the county that are paying $18 an hour. Well, that's $36,000 a year, $36,000 to $40,000 a year. Those people cannot live and work. I think Fort Mill's a great example of, we've brought a company in that is looking to hire 800 people. I don't know where they're going to find them, but they're not going to find them close to where they're going to be working, because they can't afford to live close to where they're going to be working. So they're going to come from Mecklenburg County. That's where they're going to come from, not York County. And so I think we have to be, everything that we've talked about tonight, they're all puzzle pieces. They all go together. One impacts the other throughout every bit of this conversation.
Yep.
So, you know, we've got individual pages and we've got individual topics, but I think they're all puzzle pieces, and when you put them all together, they definitely, they impact one another.
Yeah, and just to talk about stormwater fees, if y'all don't want to have a stormwater district or fees, that's fine. Y'all brought up stormwater infrastructure and needing to update it and replace it, so we're just gonna have to come up with ways to pay for
I
it.
think we know what they need to tell the state what they need to do first.
Okay, but in terms of stormwater, we do have stormwater infrastructure that is failing or will fail. So the question is,
Agreed.
when it does, how do we pay for it? Doesn't have to be a stormwater fee, that money's gotta come from somewhere, so that's just something we gotta wrestle with.
Josh, in all honesty, I say that, I do think that we need, nobody's gonna do it if we don't do it.
Sure.
We need to be able to tell the state, because you know what, I'm spending my C-Fund money on Highway 72 that got completely cut off because water
Yeah.
went across Dead Man's Curve over there, right there where the Passmores is.
Mhm.
This is the problem, is that we have got to be more strategic when we approach our county, our state delegation.
Yeah.
And SCDOT about, this is where the stormwater is failing, and the majority of the time it is on state roads, which is, like, we need to put together a priority list. That's part of our ask to them, is to say, hey, help us do this. This is impeding economic development, this is impeding people getting to their homes, this is impeding kids getting to school.
Right.
And if they're not gonna do it, then at least we have that answer, but I think it's a mistake for us to think that that's gonna happen independent of us doing that for the citizens, at least having that
And
plan.
we got the 30 roads that flooded during the last storm.
Yeah.
So Public Works,
Have those-
Emergency Management
yeah.
have 30
Routinely,
roads that
every single
closed.
time.
You know what did not flood?
So again,
No, and Eric's still 100% verifying it, but it appears Regent Park didn't flood.
Oh, good, so,
Because there's been work and everything there. so.
Well,
All right, so closing, is this?
All right.
everyone's
what I
done?
want to
I'm the last
elaborate,
comment.
I mean, praise the Lord.
what I was wanting to elaborate on
PCL.
is also the situation with our people that live on the urban service boundary. I talked to you about the issue with the boy whose land's eroded over 20 feet.
Mhm.
I took it upon myself, I got a gentleman that does detention ponds and all to go out there and look. City of Rock Hill don't want to claim nothing, and, alright? Come find out, he looked, the state road, their pipe had caved in.
Okay, stay.
Would not take enough water, even though the detention pond that's on the city side is overgrown. I cut firewood out there. It's just overgrown. Well, the state was supposed to have showed up. I hadn't heard from them yet today.
Okay.
But those situations there too is something else. When you get on that line, and I've had it happen more than once, don't nobody want to take responsibility when it's right there, and it's not a given. That's
Yep,
my point.
yep, good example.
You know, for the length of this strategic plan, there are no seed funds. And that's a problem. So we do need to make that case. And, I mean, we're looking at 3 years, and 3 years to the county that's a long range plan maybe for
Most
3
definitely.
years.
I do think that we need to identify that, like you're talking about the stormwater needs, I think we just need to make sure that we are able to articulate who's responsible for those, and how do we
Sure.
strategically go about trying to capture that.
I think it's
Yep.
great.
I want to say something right over here.
Rapid.
Y'all heard Josh is involved in staff, and I've been in those meetings, and a lot of y'all remember the days that Bill Tunes went through this. You know, I want to give Josh credit, and I hope you understand the amount of work going behind the scenes to have this detailed
And
level of
Trish, and
document.
Trish.
Yeah, and Trish has been intimately involved as
Yes.
well. I mean, deep dive in all this stuff. We've never had a document like this to go through and pick at and poke at, and there's a lot of work behind that. I think Josh and Trish, you know, really spearheaded all of this, and I want to make sure that y'all hear that and understand that. Literally, dude, I reviewed this, last week for a couple, 30 minutes with y'all. A lot of great work going on behind the scenes, and I hope that council And I think y'all do. I'm very impressed with everybody showed up with a list of comments and this and that stuff. So, very proud of the work that y'all did in this and Josh did this. And I've been through a lot of these things and Christie's smiling because she knows exactly what I'm talking about. This is a great thing for y'all.
Allison and Bob have been through them. Thank you for all of the effort that you put into this. I see you engaging. I see you working with our groups. It's exciting to me to see us turn some corners, and I'm thankful to council to be coming here tonight prepared. Is there anybody who has any other comments before we adjourn?
I'll just say, these things are always tough because if everybody's participating, everybody has a difference in opinion.
That's right.
So,
Yep.
and we expect it
That's
to
it.
be tough. If it was easy, there'd be lines up the door, everybody would be trying to line up. But this is a tough job to set the stage for the next several years for us and staff to accomplish.
Thanks for taking the time tonight and for preparing all. This is very good.
And I'll
The
just
box
say,
was worth more than.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Sorry.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
All right.
We are adjourned.